Part 33. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 321. Gee, it's been a year. 1 year has passed so quickly. Assassin's pace, eagle eye, plus a wall of sweet air afterwards. Doesn't this cause any harm to the contained objects? Alas, only the contained object can fight against it. How can ordinary people fight against it? The laws of nature are nonsense when it comes to contained objects. Not necessarily. Don't you see, can the multiplication wax statue be contained with ordinary fire? But will members set fire? Why, a flamethrower is not fire. Indeed, as long as you know the characteristics of the multiplication wax statue, you can contain it easily, but what if you don't know the characteristics of the multiplication wax statue? What if an unknown contained object appears? It is very easy and simple to know the characteristics and contain them in a targeted manner. Even an ordinary person knows how to contain them. The scary thing is those objects that do not know their characteristics and do not understand the information. This is the most troublesome. Indeed, intelligence is the most important. Without knowing the information, any alpha containment object can kill someone. Just like that cactus. At this time, countless people were discussing, sighing, and watching everything that happened in the Dao Golden List. At this time, in the picture, as Mo Kyung and others entered the camp of the 5 groups, everyone became more and more attentive. At this moment, Mo Kyung was using an assassin's steps, which seemed to not exist in the eyes of others. This assassin's steps were very strange. Mo Kyung took one step to the left and then another, as if he was stuck in the optical perspective, which made him ordinary people can't detect it with the naked eye. At this time, not only Mo Kyung, but also Du Xiao and Mike also started the assassin's pace and followed. The assassin's pace is not just as simple as visual ignorance, even the slightest touch from others will be ignored. The other party will not consider what happened at all, and will be ignored directly. Of course, this is just to numb the human brain and has no effect on the machine. Use. The camera can easily see the appearance of the person who uses the assassin's steps. However, there are obviously no cameras in this camp. At this time, 2 students came out of the camp of the 5th group, talking and laughing. It seemed that they were going to take the exam. They even touched Mo Kyung lightly, but they didn't pay attention. They continued to walk over and went out. Mo Kyung smiled, said nothing, entered the 5th group camp openly, and started looking for meat everywhere. Not to mention, there is meat in every room here. But in the rooms in the camp, not a single person is seen. Indeed, today is the year-end assessment of groups 5 and 6, and these 5 groups have arrived. Now there are only 19 people left, most of them have gone to take exams, and only 2 or 3 are studying on their own. Mo Kyung ignored those people and began to search for meat, collecting meat from several rooms, enough for 100 kilograms. The meat of the animals here is not just ordinary meat. The meat here allows them to increase muscle strength during exercise. After eating the bones, it can increase the hardness of the bones, and eating the internal organs can even replenishes human organs. It can be said that these animals, in fairy tales, are all spiritual beasts. That's enough, I've already made a lot of money. Mo Kyung looked at the 200 kilograms of meat he had plundered and smiled slightly. It often happens that people like him run to other groups to get meat. Those in group 5 often go to group 4 to get meat, and those in group 4 often go to group 3 and group 2 to get meat. Of course, there is also an unspoken rule that students in the first year of high school cannot take things from students in the first year. Therefore, Mo Kyung can only come to trouble the 5th group and cannot bully the 7th group, otherwise the rules will be violated. Otherwise, others will come and rob them legitimately. Those who obey the rules will be protected by the rules. Now, those in the fifth group who were robbed by Mo Kyan will have no choice but to consider themselves unlucky as long as they are not caught on the spot. Want to eat meat? Okay, let's go to the fourth group. I can't go to the sixth group anyway. Those in the fourth group can only go to the third or second group. Those in the third group can only go to the second or first group. Those in the second group can only go to the first group. Those in the first group. If you have the ability, you can go to the previous class of students to cause trouble. Soon, after Mo Kyan took away the meat from the room, he drew a 6 on the wall. Whenever he took the meat from the room, he would draw a 6 to remind Du Xiao and Mike. However, after looking around, he didn't see 6 in the other rooms, so he couldn't help but start to doubt. He quickly hid in the grass again and just waited. At this time, he saw that there was an extra 6 beside him. He knew someone was coming. He opened his eagle eyes directly, and his vision immediately became much clearer, as if all peripheral vision became direct vision, and nothing that moved could escape his eyes. After looking around and finding no one else, he saw Du Xiao squatting next to him. He stepped forward directly and asked Du Xiao to show up, and he also showed up. Mike hasn't come for so long, maybe he's been caught, right? Du Xiao frowned and said. Go take a look. If there are few people, we will grab it, Mo Kyan said. This. Du Xiao hesitated. Let's not talk about whether we can win or not. What if we get injured? This is the year-end exam. If we fail, we will be eliminated directly. Well, then the other party thinks so too, Mo Kyan smiled. Du Xiao was stunned and his eyes lit up. Immediately, the two of them headed towards the area where Mike was responsible without saying a word. Sure enough, before they had gone far, they saw Mike with a grimace and dozens of kilograms of meat on his body. They were all placed on the ground. In front of him, there was a tall and burly man, holding a homemade crossbow and saying with a smile, "Are you running? Why don't you run away? I'll let you run 50 meters first." The corner of Mike's mouth twitched. He himself had already hit the target with every shot at 50 meters, let alone the 5 groups of guys in front of him. 50 meters. 100 meters is about the same. At this time, the young man saw that Mike was silent and sighed. I didn't expect that the 6th group also participated in this game. What? You're not the only one, are you? It's just me, I run fast, so I'm going to give it a try, Mike said. Oh? Yeah. The young man narrowed his eyes, turned back suddenly, raised his crossbow and fired. Whoosh! The crossbow arrow instantly shot at Mo Kyan, who was walking over. At this time, Mo Kyan was not in an assassin's pace, but just walked over like this. It was normal to be discovered. Seeing the crossbow arrow shooting towards him, Mo Kyan narrowed his eyes, raised his hand, and grabbed the crossbow arrow directly in his hand. You react quickly, don't you hide anymore, the young man looked at Mo Kyan and smiled. What are you hiding from? You have discovered this. You were practicing your crossbow and saw him with your eagle eye, right? Mo Kyan asked directly. That's not true, Hawkeye plans to open it during the exam, the young man said with a smile. Oh? Don't have eagle eye turned on, Mo Kyan looked at Mike. Mike was also very excited. Impossible, I was far away from you, and you shot me with one arrow. If you don't open your eagle eye, what will happen? Oh, sorry about that. I like to shoot a few random arrows in the morning to get a feel for it, but to my surprise, a black man shoots out of nowhere, the young man laughed loudly. Mike's face turned darker. The young man ignored Mike and looked at Mo Kyan, asking, I'm 507, what about you? 666, Mo Kyan said. 6. The young man hesitated and said speechlessly, let's talk about my name is Uxin. Mo Kyan nodded. Okay. You. Xian nodded, and then said, what, if you show up proactively, do you still want to save him? Is it possible that you don't know that if you are discovered, you will be beaten? Mo Qian nodded and said, I know, but as long as you have the ability, isn't it possible to rob openly? Ha ha ha, little brother, is this interesting? Tell me about the robbery? You do not know me, Xian asked with a smile. Oh? Are you famous? Mo Qian looked at Xian with a strange expression. Now it was Xian's turn to be embarrassed. Forget it, it doesn't matter if you don't know me, you will remember it after you get a few punches from me. As he said that, he strode towards Mo Qian with great strides, and punched Huanglong directly with that powerful and heavy punch. Mo Qian, be careful not to take his punch, Mike exclaimed. Obviously, he had suffered a loss before reminding him. However, it's over. Seeing Xian coming, Mo Qian also tensed up his muscles, and instantly burst out with terrifying power, and punched Xian fiercely. Fist. Boom. A wave of air spread from the fists of the two men. The terrifying force shocked Xian, who was shocked to take a step back. Mo Qian was even more outrageous, and was forcefully knocked backwards by 4 meters. Hiss, so angry. At this time, Mo Qian and Xian said in unison, both looking at each other in shock. However, following these words, the two of them looked at each other in surprise. You are really sixth oaf? Xian couldn't help asking. I'm not bragging, but in this fifth group, or even the fourth group, no one can make me take a step back, you are still the first. Hearing this, Mo Qian was also stunned. You are from the fifth group, why are you so strong, how strong is your punch? 1200, Yuzinyu opened his mouth. Catty, Mo Qian slightly raised his eyebrows. No, 1,200 kilograms, Xian explained seriously. Mo Qian? Mike? Du Xiao? Now, the three of them are confused. 1,200 kilograms. What the hell is this? We are all in the same batch, even if this Xian this is the second time Xian has come to Extreme Island. How can he train so horribly? You know, Mo Qian is only 420 kilograms now. Du Xiao is about 400 kilograms, and Mike is close to 400 kilograms. But what? In this way, they can be regarded as the top strength of the 6 groups. But now, they encountered a 1,200 kilogram monster. How could they be knocked 4 meters away? The corners of Mo Qian's mouth twitched. As for Xian taking a step back, that was purely his absolute hit symbolically made him take a step back. The gap between the two of them must be calculated in multiples. Seeing the three of them confused, Xian smiled and said, my father is a Gamma level member, and I am 18. I started extreme training when I was 10 years old, and I had 800 muscles since I was born. As soon as these words came out, the three of them suddenly realized. No wonder, just talking about the ultimate power of human beings, there is no way it can have such terrifying power. 0. Co-author, this guy has 800 muscles since he was born. How much is this beyond the limit? A member of the club. But there is no way, my father is a member of the Gamma Club, genes are something you can't envy. Tisk, tisk, I just wanted to eat some meat, but unexpectedly I met a jerk. Mo Qian looked at Xian in surprise, and then he took off 4 weight-bearing bandages on his forearm and calf. 1 bandage is 10 kilograms, and 4 bandages are 40 kilograms. Isn't it full strength? Xian's eyes lit up, and his face was full of excitement. It seemed that he had finally found his opponent. Mo Qian said bluntly, even if I don't use all my strength, even if I remove the weight, I am still no match for you. I am a special case. Xian smiled and said, not only in the 5th group, but also in the 3rd and 4th groups, I am also the first. When I went to the third group to steal meat, I always went in openly and openly. I never sneaked in. Even if I was discovered, I would kill all the way. Accept your fate, little brother, and let me beat you up. I guarantee that you will only be slightly injured. Uxian was full of confidence. However, Amokian left the meat that Mike dropped on the ground. At this time, the meat that Mike dropped would occasionally be a little less. This was of course Du Xiao stealing the meat in secret. Then Uxian hadn't noticed yet, but Amokian's attention was attracted by Amokian. Now, all he needed was for Du Xiao to steal the meat, and Amokian and Mike could escape safely. What? Fight? Only ghosts will fight you. The key is, he does it casually. Then I met a bad guy, how to fight? He was stalling for time. But usually stalling for time is definitely useless. You still have to show some strength. Tisk, use your full strength and let me see the strength of the leaders of the 6 groups, Uxian said. Without saying a word, he rushed forward and punched. Amokian rolled forward, and then disappeared from Uxian's sight in the blink of an eye. Uxian knew that Amokian had entered the assassin's pace state. Assassin. He can also do the steps, and his training is pretty good, but it doesn't mean that he can see Amokian after entering the assassin's steps. If he wants to see Amokian, he has to activate the eagle eye. It's just that the eagle eye is what he wants to keep for the exam. He subconsciously waved his fists around him, but it was useless. He didn't touch Amokian at all. Guard, are you forcing me to use eagle eye? Uxian sighed, and then, without saying a word, he opened his eagle eyes, and then he discovered Amokian. Amokian had already come around behind him at some point. With a stern look on his face, he turned around suddenly, and punched him again. Come on. With this kind of power, if Amokian blocks it, his bones and tendons may be broken. He took a deep breath, walked around the edge of the fist, grabbed Uxian's hand joints, and then bullied him forward and used his shoulder to swim forward. Xian's heart lifted, his other hand rested on Uxian's waist, and he lifted it with both hands at the same time. Joke. Want to borrow some help? Uxian instantly understood what Amokian was thinking, but he smiled slightly. Amokian has learned various fighting techniques in GE 4.0, such as how to move 1,000 pounds with 4 ounces, and techniques such as using force to fight, but hasn't he learned it? On Extreme Island there are systematic rules, this method of leveraging force, and there are techniques to break it. Uxian subconsciously used force, intending to knock Amokian down first. But then, roll! Amokian shouted, and with a strong hand, he threw Uxian away. Boom! Uxian was thrown 5 meters away by Amokian, and hit the ground so hard that the wall collapsed. Ha! Uxian got up in embarrassment, still a little confused. Although he was thrown away, he was only slightly injured. However, what made him confused was that Amokian actually threw him away. He guessed that Amokian weighed 600 kilograms, his strength was 1,200 kilograms, which was a huge difference. But just like that, Amokian used his strength to hit him and throw him away. He also knew the skill. He had realized it before, he wanted to counterattack, but Amokian was faster, so he was thrown away inexplicably. It was as if his skills were completely different from Amokian's. Is the fighting ability of the 6th group so strong? Uxian bewildered. He had only felt this feeling of being crushed in terms of skills in front of people in the 1st and 2nd groups before. But now, what level are you in group 6? Uxian couldn't help asking. He is number 1 in our group, Mike said bluntly. Number 1, right? Okay, come again. Uxian licked the corner of his mouth, and without saying a word, he stepped forward again. There was no way he would give Amokian a second chance. This time, there was absolutely no way he would be thrown away. However, there was no way he would give Emokayang a second chance. Boom! Snapped. As Uxian punched, Emokayang blocked it with his hand, released his strength, pushed his shoulder, and hit Uxian with his waist, knocking him 3 meters away again. Uxian. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 322. Poof, ha ha ha. At this moment, countless people couldn't help it anymore, and they couldn't help but look at Uxian, who was thrown away in the picture. Tisk tisk, this Uxian is a cheater, but who knows, Emokayang is also a cheater, and these two cheaters meet together. It's obvious that Emokayang is more cheating, but he still has the nerve to say that others are cheating. Uxian obviously hasn't realized the seriousness of the matter yet. As everyone knows, it's useless even if he comes a few more times. Emokayang doesn't even need to be very strong. He only needs a gentle push and Uxian will be blown away uncontrollably. Tisk, tisk, Uxian still doesn't give up. He still wants to fight Emokayang? So what if you are cheating? So what if you have strong genes from your parents? In front of the real plug-in, it's not enough. At this time, countless people looked at everything that happened in the Dao Golden List with amusement. At this time, in the picture, it can be seen that as Emokayang blasted Uxian away, Uxian did not give up and wanted to continue. He could see that Emokayang's skills were really powerful. He could even combine several skills into one. However, he didn't believe in that evil yet. Come again, he shouted low, thinking to see how long Emokayang could suppress him. However, Emokayang glanced at the disappeared meat on the ground, smiled slightly, and shouted to Mike, "Let's go, we won't, it's time to play, retreat first." Hearing this, Uxian got angry and rushed forward, shouting, "You're pretending to be cool and you want to run away, how can such a good thing happen?" There is no doubt that Uxian didn't want Emokayang to leave. Emokayang really couldn't leave. But Emokayang wanted to throw Uxian away. It was easy and simple. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, 20 times. No matter how many times Uxian rushed up to him, he was thrown away by Emokayang every time. Although he was only slightly injured after falling, he was also hurt by being thrown away 20 times. Not only his body hurt, his head hurt, and his whole body hurt. Emokayang's skills and moves were simply dazzling. They were obviously derived from the mixed martial arts skills of the Blue and White Society, but Emokayang integrated these 20 moves into one, and came up with new moves that were simply, it was impossible to guard against him. Even if he used a temporary technique, he could be thrown away. In the end, Emokayang became more and more relaxed. With just a twist and lean, he could be knocked several meters away and smash the surrounding wooden walls and thatch. Uxian was very stubborn, but at this time, he didn't dare to hold his head back anymore. He was thrown around like a sack of oak, which made him dizzy, and he couldn't bear it anymore. At this time, he was feeling dizzy. "Get up," staggering a little. "Tisk, are you okay? You won't have a concussion, right?" Emokayang couldn't help but asked. "Wanjie." Uxian looked at Emokayang and scratched the hair that had fallen off his head, his expression extremely ugly. "Damn, how can I take the exam if I'm like this? If someone saw it, wouldn't it be embarrassing? He has a bald spot on his head, and a corner of his head is missing from the west. He is simply a leper. It's normal for people in the 6th group like Emokayang not to know him, but basically everyone from the 5th group and up knows him, and he's still a big celebrity. Now that Emokayang has been tossing him like this, well, I'm really too embarrassed to see anyone." He grabbed his hair with some annoyance. It seemed that he had no choice but to shave it off. It's better to have a bald head than to have a bunch of things missing here and there. Okay, this is enough, right? There are still exams to take, how about finishing it? Mo Kyung smiled. Uxian looked at Mo Kyung and said with some reluctance, can I ask, what is your fighting score? I haven't taken the test yet. I took it 2 months ago and got a score of 500, Mo Kyung said with a smile. 2 months ago? 500 points? No wonder, judging from your current performance, it's at least 700%, Uxian sighed. Mo Kyung nodded with a smile. To be honest, he really focused on training in the fighting area. He scored 500 points without any cheating. Seeing that Uxian stopped talking, Mo Kyung turned around. Just want to leave? Wait a moment, suddenly, Uxian opened his mouth and said. What? Do you still want to fight? Up, Mo Kyung frowned and looked at Uxian. Sorry, last time. Uxian gritted his teeth and said, I still have a trump card, but I haven't used it yet. Oh? The trump card, Mo Kyung looked at Uxian with some curiosity. Seeing Mo Kyung's curiosity, Uxian took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, I also have a derivative trait, which was passed down to me by my mother. She was once a Lemiter. Worry, you are a bit too big for this, right? The corners of Mo Kyung's mouth twitched. It has 800 muscles, and it also has derived properties. Damn it, their destination is Rome, and this Uxian was born in Rome. There is no way, this is not something I can decide. In the past, the company thought that my mother's characteristics would not be transmitted to others, but they didn't know that the infection was through the amniotic fluid. The doctors who delivered the babies at that time all had those characteristics, and they even talked about me. Uxian was a little embarrassed, and then he said seriously, I have never used that move against the fourth group. I didn't expect that I would be forced to use it today by you, the sixth group. Tisk, what do you mean? Bloodline inheritance. Is there a limit to blood inheritance? Mo Kyung looked at Uxian teasingly. Uxian was also very embarrassed. Not to mention that his father was a member of the club, his mother also gave him derivative characteristics. With these many advantages, in other worlds, he would be at least a second-generation immortal. Or the kind who are born with such high talents. If there was a list for supporting actors with extraordinary talents, then Uxian would definitely be on the list. Well. Uxian sighed as the second generation of the club, I can't help it. If you mind, even if I win, I can admit defeat. It doesn't matter, I don't use my full strength, you can use it, I don't mind, Mo Kyung said with a smile. Then, he looked at Uxian carefully. He wanted to see what kind of derived characteristics Uxian had. At this time, he suddenly fell over in front of Mo Kyung. His head was down. Like a green onion, with his feet in the air and swinging his arms, he rushed towards Mo Kyung. Looking at his hair carefully, he found that Uxian's head didn't seem to be in contact with the ground at all, and it was still swinging in the wind. This weird posture made Mo Kyung stunned. Before Mo Kyung could react, Uxian came closer. With a kick of his legs, his head went straight into the ground. He seemed to be jumping up to hit someone. But because it was the other way around. When Uxian jumped up, he could only hit Mo Kyung's knee. Mo Kyung narrowed his eyes and subconsciously kicked out, intending to kick the fist away. However, inexplicably, Mo Kyung's foot after passing through Uxian's fist, he received a solid punch in the chest. Boom! Mo Kyung flew upside down in an instant and hit a tree. He bared his teeth and clutched his aching chest. Until then, he finally understood. Just flip the image upside down. Mo Kyung guessed that this characteristic should be the visual impact. In the eyes of others, Uxian is upside down, but that is just a shadow. In fact, Uxian is still standing. In this case, it is difficult to distinguish at all where did Uxian want to fight, let alone catch Uxian and throw him out. Amokian was chased and beaten by Uxian for a while, and he was very embarrassed. It was difficult to catch and throw him away. Fortunately, after beating him, Amokian also I found the trick. I don't need to worry about where to kick with my fists and feet, just hit Uxian's waist. Boom, Amokian found an opportunity and kicked Uxian directly in the waist. However, Uxian smiled. It was seen that Amokian's kick missed directly, and then he felt a heavy blow to his ribs. Was kicked straight away, and was thrown to pieces. You don't still have refraction, do you? Amokian got up and looked at Uxian speechlessly. Clever. Uxian smiled. It's already very awkward to stand upside down, and I can also refract my own image to a distance of 1 meter to the side. You can't hit me, because I can refract if I want to, and if I don't want to refract, I can't. You have no way of telling where I am. Tisk, there's something. Amokian clicked his tongue in surprise, then picked up a stone and said with a smile that just depends on the face. As he said that, he hit the stone directly with a swish. Then, boom. Oops. With the sound of impact and Uxian's exclamation, the stone hit a ball of air, and that was the location of Uxian's body. Let me go, can you deceive me? Uxian's face was full of depression. It seems that you can really move around without moving. You were on my right before, but now you are on my left. Amokian looked at the air and said with a smile. Oh, it seems that you are very sensitive to characteristics, but it's useless. In this state, you can't beat me at all, Uxian laughed. Yeah? As I said, I didn't use all my strength. Abnormal characteristics, I have them too. Amokian smiled, then strode forward, stretched out his thumb to one side of his mouth, and bit it gently. Before Uxian could react, Amokian had already rushed forward and violently bit the finger. The ground pointed at him. Tisk tisk tisk. In an instant, the -162-degree liquid natural gas sprayed all over Uxian's head and face. Uxian was shivering and looked at Amokian with a confused face. It's so cold. The sudden cooling down is like being in the depths of Antarctica. He stepped back continuously, looking at the white mist in Amokian's hand with some horror. What is this? He asked while retreating, intending to escape from the encirclement of the white mist. However, Amokian has an absolute hit, no matter how you retreat, it will be useless. Liquefied natural gas is colorless and odorless, you can spray it as you want. As for the large amount of white mist, sorry, that white mist is not liquefied natural gas, but the water vapor cooled by the liquefied natural gas. Amokian is not worried about his strange blood effect being transmitted to others. After all, it spreads 600 times as soon as it comes out of the body. The only way to infect others because of his strange blood is to inject his blood into others. So, under normal circumstances, he can use it however he wants. At this time, Usina was frozen. I was shivering, and my legs and waist were covered with bruises from frostbite. My legs were numb, my hands were numb, my tongue was still knotted, and my teeth were shivering and chattering up and down. Class, monkey, monkey, monkey. Uxian said tremblingly, obviously a little embarrassed, not knowing what he was talking about. Monkey what? Amokian licked his finger, and the wound stopped bleeding quickly. After all, it was just a little bit of skin. Before, he would only have a little blood and had to squeeze it out. But now the blood has changed. It expands and volatilizes when it encounters air. No matter how small your wound is, the liquefied natural gas will be sprayed directly. Amokian looked at the monkey who was still there at this time, rubbing the frostbite, and trembling Uxian. Monkey couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time. Finally, he breathed out monkey Sile. Okay, I can speak in dialect. I was knocked down before, but now I'm frostbitten. Tisk, it's so miserable. Are you still fighting? Mo Kyung asked with a smile. No fight, no fight, Uxian shook his head repeatedly. He even took out his trump card and couldn't beat Mo Kyung, so what's the point of beating him? Mo Kyung's ability is simply unmatched by him. He still has to fight in close quarters, but Mo Kyung just shoots from a distance. The air conditioner was like a machine gun. How could it be used? Mo Kyung smiled 730. He knew that in fact, his alien effect was not as terrible as Uxian thought. The main reason was that he had absolute hit, otherwise, the air conditioner would only be it can take away a little bit of Uxian's heat, and Uxian's humanoid explosive bear physique can obviously handle it. But it's different with an absolute hit. However, he won't tell the truth. Okay, you go and heal yourself, it's time for me to take the exam too, Mo Kyung said with a smile. Together, Uxian hurriedly stepped forward. All the previous dissatisfaction disappeared at this moment. His skills are not as good as others, and his cheating is not as good as others, so what's the point? In Uxian's opinion, Mo Kyung will definitely be the same in the future. He is a man of the hour. The two of them soon became acquainted. Mo Kyung also talked about his identity. He was just an ordinary person before, but he also came into contact with the contained objects, became abnormal, and became a limiter and entered the extreme island. It was also recommended mainly after containment breaches. Awesome. Uxian admired, and then asked curiously, by the way, what are your characteristics? Not to mention you. Xian, even Mike was curious. Mo Kyung smiled. People of different blood, don't you know? Uxian suddenly realized, so that's it, a person of different blood, unexpectedly, there is such blood. Are you, liquefied natural gas? Mo Kyung nodded. No wonder it's so cold, Uxian clicked his tongue and marveled. People with different bloods have a universal effect, and the blood of people with different bloods are all random. Unexpectedly, Mo Kyung also picked a random one. At the same time, after Mo Kyung's inquiry, he also learned about Uxian's what is the derived characteristic. This characteristic is far from as simple as it seems on the surface. His characteristic also has side effects. Refracting images at will requires vision. He has to reverse his field of vision first. When others look at him, it feels like it is inverted. The same goes for refraction. When he sees others, he also needs to see others in the position of refraction before he can refract again. To put it bluntly, inversions are all inversions. Others see him as inverted, and he sees others as inverted. Others see him as inverted. He refracts, and he sees others refract. But he is very aware of his own abilities, and he can rely on his foresight and even proficiency to win. To put it bluntly, he is equivalent to being infected with the abnormal effect of optical disorder. Finally arrived at the examination room, and Uxian stopped talking and ran to the infirmary in a hurry. How about the meat? At this time, Mo Kyung saw Du Xiao coming over and immediately asked with a smile. Don't worry, all 620 pounds are stored in the apartment, it's very safe, Du Xiao nodded. Big profit this time. Mike's face was also full of excitement. Okay, the physical fighting test is the last one. Save your stomach and have a good meal tonight. I hope you can get good results, Mo Kyung nodded. The two of them also nodded with excitement. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 323. Tisk, Stand upside down and become a shadow? This characteristic is completely useless in our world of cultivating immortals. The monks attack in a wide range. A sword energy sweeps over and cuts them in half. No matter if you are a fantasy or a real person. That's right, this ability is not enough to be seen in the world of immortality. What kind of refraction and projection? With a quick scan of his consciousness, he knew where it was directly. How about giving this ability to Mo directly to Tianqi? However, that doesn't mean it's completely useless. It's still possible to catch him by surprise. After all, under normal circumstances, when you see a phantom coming towards you, wouldn't your first reaction be to attack the phantom? Moreover, this phantom is running backwards. Who wouldn't be shocked to see it? It's really scary, it looks like a ghost. Ghost? Haha, why do ghosts still have to call me master when they seependeo? Ghosts are not scary, but other characteristics are scary. This person was born with 800 muscles. It can be said that he is simply a genius in body training. So, when we practice cultivation, is it to build muscles? Our cultivation is not about building muscles, it is about connecting the muscles, bones and skin, it is about toning the physical body. This is just under normal circumstances. If you think about it, if Shihao was born with 800 muscles, how strong would his physical body be after training? Although Shihao was born without 800 muscles, he had one more bone than ordinary people. He had 207 bones. At this time, everyone was discussing and watching everything that happened in the Dao Golden List. And at this moment, they could see in the picture. As Mo Qiang and Du Xiao arrived at the examination room, they also saw many newcomers queuing up to take the exam. A year has passed, and Mo Qiang and the others are no longer considered newcomers. There are newcomers every 3 months, and this time the newcomers are 1 year behind them. These newcomers are just like when Mo Qiang and the others first came. Everyone's face was full of curiosity, touching this, taking a look at that, and even looked at the operations of the old students from time to time, which was so dazzling. And Mo Qiang was also very excited when he saw the newcomers. Sentiment. New people often come and old people often leave. Now, there are only 69 people left in their 6 groups. This is only the first year. Who knows how many will be left in another year or 2? Mo Qiang, what should we test first? Du Xiao asked. As usual, just drive, this thing is still my shortcoming, if you don't do well in the test, you can still seize the time to retake it, Mo Qiang said, and walked to the driving test room. Mo Qiang didn't worry about anything else, the most worrying thing was driving. He took the test 2 months ago, and he could get 500 points in other subjects, but this one in driving, he only had 420 points. So, he has been practicing driving for the past 2 months, hoping to make up for his shortcomings. I don't know how many points I can pass, but I feel like it won't be 460 cents, Mo Qiang was a little worried. In the past 2 months, he had practiced hard, and he estimated in his mind that he could at most raise his driving score to 460. But worry is worry. Who knows how much is considered a passing grade? However, the corner of Du Xiao's mouth twitched. If you can't pass, then will anyone else in our 6th group pass? Mo Qiang shook his head. It's useless to have super high scores in 1 or 2 subjects, you still have to balance it, although you don't have it projects with 700 or 800 points, but you all have 500 points in each subject. Mo Qiang sighed. Mike and Du Xiao didn't take it seriously, thinking that Mo Qiang's driving skills were at least up to par. 2 months ago, I scored 420 points. Now, 2 months have passed. I work hard and I feel hopeful at 500 points. At this time, the 3 of them, Mo Qiang, were lining up and chatting. However, the content of the chat really frightened the newcomers around. It's 400% to open and close your mouth, but 70% to 800% to speak up. They were so fooled that they were stunned for a moment. What the hell? Isn't it based on 10 points, a newcomer said subconsciously. Mo Kyung smiled and glanced at Du Xiao. This guy, like Du Xiao before, thought he was pretty good, so he came to take the exam and got a 9 points. He thought it was a 10-point system. It felt like very good. Later I found out that it might be on the 100-point scale, and I became autistic. Only later did I realize that it wasn't on the 100-point scale. Maybe it was on the 1000-point scale, which made me even more autistic. Fortunately, now 1 year has passed, and Du Xiao is no longer what he used to be. Listening to these words that seemed like the next day, the three of them couldn't help but smile. Mo Kyung looked at the newcomer and found that they were quite destined. This group of people is from 2019. Those who graduated, numbered 66, are still in the 6th group. The total is 201,9666. Mo Kyung kindly reminded, take the exam carefully, don't be in a hurry, there is a cafeteria for the physical fitness test, the soup there is good, unlimited supply, just go and have a drink when you are tired. Bowl. Oh? Are there any special effects? The newcomer's eyes lit up and he asked subconsciously. This guy was also familiar with him. At the same time, he also knew very well that Mo Kyung seemed to be a big boss. After listening to Mo Kyung's answer, he started asking questions. It was nothing more than Mo Kyung once. I also thought about some questions. Some Mo Kyung could answer, but some, he knew they were tests from the instructor, so he ignored them. When he got annoyed later, Mo Kyung directly used the assassin steps and disappeared in front of this man. Damn it, where are the people? The newcomer stared blankly at the empty place in front of him. What the hell is this? Teleporting. Mike and Du Xiao looked at each other, smiled slightly, and said nothing. Of course, there are also knowledgeable people on the field. Some of them are 2019. When a senior student saw Mo Kyung disappear, he immediately exclaimed, black technology. Are you from the previous term? Last boss. As soon as these words came out, the surrounding area instantly became lively, and everyone came over. A group of people were asking questions. Some wanted to ask how much is qualified, and some wanted to ask what the full score is. How many? Some wanted to ask what they had learned. Regarding this, Mike and Du Xiao, one big and two big, looked at each other and disappeared. They finally understood why they had not seen the old students before, co-authored. That's it. Let's all use assassin steps to avoid trouble. Finally, with the cue. Next, 666, accompanied by the examiner's cry. Previously, the 666 newcomers wanted to find clues about Mo Kyung and others, but unexpectedly, they were stunned when they heard this cry. Ah! It's me again? Didn't I take the exam? He looked at the examiner blankly. Not you, the examiner glanced at. Not me, newcomer 666 was stunned. It's me. Immediately, Mo Kyung suddenly appeared. Okay, go up there yourself, the examiner glanced at Mo Kyung and said. Everyone was familiar with it, and Mo Kyung didn't waste any time. He got into the tank directly, then accelerated violently, drifting through obstacles one after another, and rode like a king. There is no need to take the basic test. Mo Kyung has passed the previous ones, so he can just take the test that he failed the first time. This time, Mo Kyung became more and more familiar with it, and he could control the tank as he pleased, and he was really good at it. Driving a tank and drifting, accelerating through curves, accelerating and leaping over trenches, these are simply basic operations. The new students around them were mesmerized when they saw it, calling them cheaters. But they didn't know, Mo Kyung's driving skills are at the bottom in the 6th group. This is the difference in vision. In 1 year, each of them has grown at a genius-like speed. Not to mention the size of the newcomers. Countless people in the world were very moved when they saw this scene. 1 year. In just 1 year, Kyan went from being a 1-2 puncher to such an experienced driver. The key is, Kyan in their group, this driving skill is still the worst. Tisk, this is outrageous, outrageous. Finally, Kyan drove the tank back to the starting point, skillfully opened the lid, and looked at the examiner. Not bad. You have passed the level of this tank. If your aircraft gets full marks for level 5 next, your overall score will be at least 500, the examiner laughed and said. I have never been able to pass this test before, it's so difficult. Kyan looked at the plane and sighed. You can also retake the exam, and as of now, you can have a comprehensive evaluation of 480, the examiner looked at the tablet in his hand and said. How many passes? Kyan asked. Have no idea, the examiner shook his head directly. Okay, Kyan pouted. If you don't know, you don't know. Since you don't know how much you need to pass, let's take the test as a full score. Only when he passes the exam and gets full marks will he feel confident. At least he knew that the advanced level 6 projects were something that needed to be learned and passed in the 2nd year. Then if you pass the advanced level 5 exam and pass the exam, you will definitely be fine. And the 5th stage of this aircraft is actually a forced landing at sea. The fighter jet is required to fall from the sky at high speed and then make an emergency landing on the sea, and the aircraft must not be damaged. Yes, it's an emergency landing without damage. But unfortunately, the height given was 10,000 meters. Falling from the sky at an altitude of 10,000 meters, not to mention making an emergency landing without damage, even making an emergency landing with only one wing broken is considered an unnatural maneuver. Fortunately, after practicing for so long, coupled with the assistance of Hawkeye and his own cheating ability, he still wants to give it a try. Immediately, Kyan entered the plane, put on his helmet, and filled the helmet with water until it covered his mouth and nose. This is Kyan's habit, and many people know it. Kyan claimed it was a small quirk to keep himself calm. Anyway, he has the deep diver effect. If he can't hold it in, it doesn't matter to others. Besides, whoever flies a plane doesn't have a quirk. Of course, the real purpose was that Kyan was afraid that his breath would tear the inside of the plane. So I just stopped breathing. Soon, it started. The plane that lost its engine slowly slowed down, and then fell from a high altitude. Kyan controlled the plane in a large circle on the island. The airflow rejected by the plane became arrows shot by Kyan. They could go wherever Kyan wanted them to go. At this time, his entire plane was like a balloon wrapped in airflow, gliding in the air. Finally, as it approached the sea, Kyan began to judge what would happen if he landed on the sea from this place. Soon, he frowned. At his current speed, it will definitely be damaged if it falls on the sea. The left wing will enter the water first and will most likely break. Still not working, Kyan frowned. To be honest, this airflow has a great impact on him. Because he has absolute hit, he must keep his mind off, otherwise the airflow will seriously interfere with his flight. He also has to forcibly control the landing point of those airflows. He originally thought about not cheating and relying on his own ability to pass 500. But now it seems that it is no longer possible. He has to cheat. He made up his mind, controlled the airflow and began to fine-tune the aircraft, and glide a few more times on the sea. Kilometers, gradually, the height of the plane dropped, and finally it was still gliding when it reached more than 1 meter above the sea. Finally, when it reached half a meter, it finally touched the water. He began to impact the water to slow down the plane. Finally, it was the pilot's plane, flying close to the sea, and fell into the water perfectly. The plane did not suffer any damage. Perfect, the examiner saw it from a distance and smiled slightly, knowing that Mo Kyan had succeeded. However, when he was about to ask someone to salvage it, he found that the plane controlled by Mo Kyan appeared again and swam to the shore. At the scene many people were confused. Old students were also confused. Finally, when they got closer, they realized that what kind of plane flew up on its own. It was clearly Mo Kyan who pushed the plane and swam back from the sea. New and old students, I felt dazed for a while, calling me inhuman. Why are you standing and watching? Help me, Mo Kyan shouted to the staff. As soon as I saw the plane coming back by itself, I knew it was you, the staff member smiled. Only Mo Kyan can do this. The plane weighs 20 tons, and Mo Kyan will definitely not be able to carry it. However, this plane has wheels, and he can push the wheels to the shore. He weighs 400 kilograms. As for the strength, I can still push it. Even students who have practiced for about half a year can do it, but this is only possible on land. If Mo Kyan was pushing a plane in the sea, it was just him. After all, he has the deep diver effect and doesn't need to breathe underwater. Li Wanjie. Hee, I'm in good condition today, keep going, try Advanced 6, Mo Kyan said with a smile. There is no need to take the Advanced Level 6 exam, you will definitely not pass it, the examiner said this. What does it mean? Mo Kyan was stunned. The 6th advanced level of driving requires air wall assistance to park the vehicle in the air. Can you use the air wall? The instructor was stunned. Well, Mo Kyan was speechless. In fact, not only in the Advanced 6 of driving, but also in the Advanced 6 of other sports, you can also use the air wall to assist. For example, in the Advanced 6 of shooting, this thing needs to avoid the crowd and lock on the target. If there is an air wall, the bullets fired can even be refracted and can perfectly avoid obstacles, which will be much easier. Air wall. Mo Kyan blinked. He heard the examiner say it yesterday, but the instructor didn't say what it was, and he didn't ask. He probably wouldn't say it if he asked. And these guys in front of me definitely won't say it either. He simply didn't care. Anyway, if you have passed the 5th level of driving, then you will be stable. Other subjects have already achieved perfect scores, and shooting and willpower have achieved super perfect scores. Now that things are stable here, he will take other exams. There is no doubt that even if he performs steadily, he will eventually pass. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he finished all the tests. The scores for each subject are, driving 500 points, shooting 910 points, willpower 720 points, physical fitness 640 points, reaction 580 points, fighting 660 points, arts and sciences 505 points, science and technology 512 points, and engineering 530 points. His performance is undoubtedly the first. Well, at least first among the 6 groups. Du Xiao and Mike came back after taking the exam for a long time, and they also tried their best to get 500 points on some 490-point projects. Only now did they feel relieved. After a night's rest, everyone in the 6th group gathered again early the next morning. And today, it's the day of layoffs again. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 324. At this time, countless people in the world were watching everything that happened in the Dao Golden List, and they discussed it one by one. Air wall. What ability is this? Is that the ability to walk in the air? I feel that walking in the air is not as cool as flying with a sword. Tisk, flying with a sword, that's true, it's incomparable, others are characteristics, yours is a spell. By the way, if this spell were placed in this world, would it be considered a black technology with general characteristics? Count it, Why doesn't it count? Why forget it? This is clearly something natural. It's different, it's completely different, okay. Sword flying is obtained through practice, and it consumes the mana in the body, and this air wall is obviously derived from the characteristics, it's completely different. Weird, very weird, everything in this world is weird anyway. By the way, Mo Kyung scored 900% in shooting. What the hell did he take the exam after? I remember it was only 500 points before, right? 100 points is a level, and 900 points is the 9th level. Good guy, Mo Kyung has directly passed level 9 and is ready to clear level 10. It's really different to have an absolute hit. Others can only score about 500 points, but Mo Kyung can only score 900 points. How many streets does this beat those people? At this time, countless people looked at everything that happened in the picture with emotion. And in the picture, as everyone gathered, Yibo came soon. Starting from today, you will truly enter special training. Now, all of you are the top elites in society. At least in the 9 major fields, you have reached the pinnacle of ordinary people, Yibo looked at everyone and said with a smile. Among these people, there are some who are nervous and some who are confident. The nervous ones naturally have poor scores, at least not full marks, and those who are confident are from various subjects. Those who have passed the exam. If they are eliminated after passing the exam, then they don't have to take the exam. Therefore, no matter who is worried, they will not be worried. Yibo looked at everyone's faces one by one, smiled immediately, and said, I have done it before. I told you that after passing this assessment, you will have a standard feature for club members, the air wall. The air wall is the most important thing in the next training. Even after you become a club member, you need to keep working hard, digging and developing. It has endless uses and can be combined with many techniques to do things that ordinary people cannot do. It can also be integrated with gun skills, driving skills, etc., and produce miraculous effects. With Yibo's words, everyone's expressions were different, and those who were worried were a little relieved. Listening to the instructor's words, they all seemed to have done well in the exam. It seems that this time, none of them need to be eliminated. 630. Who would have thought? Yibo. Suddenly the conversation changed and he said with a smile, it's a pity that some of you can't understand it. As soon as these words came out, the guys who had just calmed down became even more uneasy, and the corners of their mouths twitched wildly. Just listen, Yibo continued, don't you always want to know how many points are qualified? I wonder if it's 406? Or 480? In fact, I have told you a long time ago that as long as you pass the exam, you will be given new characteristics and start using the air wall. After working here for a year, you also know that many projects require the use of air walls starting from advanced level 6, and some difficult projects require the use of air walls. On the other hand, before advanced level 6, you can do any subject without an air wall. In other words, you can pass the advanced level 5 exam in all subjects in 1 year. Everyone understood this. But after understanding it, everyone's mouth twitched. In other words, there is no passing line at all, or in other words, full marks are the passing line. After reading the name, you can go to the airport, Yibo spoke calmly, and immediately began to read names. About 40 people came out one after another. Looking at the remaining people standing there were only 28 left. From the 200 at the beginning, from 08 people to 28 people now, this elimination rate is simply not too high. In the crowd, Mike and Du Xiao were frightened and breathed a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, they also got full marks in the exam, otherwise, they would be the ones leaving. As for those who left, of course, there are no complaints. They have experienced too many eliminations and have looked away. Today, it is their fault for not working hard and making progress. They cannot blame others. There is nothing to be unwilling to do. Finally, they left with them. Yibo looked at the remaining people and said with a smile, "Next, it's time to give you sweets." As soon as these words came out, the eyes of the remaining people lit up. Can we finally get in touch with new things? Then, they saw that Yibo handed out a small piece of paper. Everyone was confused. What is this? It's just a piece of paper. Paper. But when they looked carefully, they discovered that there was a very small, translucent, insignificant white dot on the paper. This was the candy Yibo handed down. Just that much. Mike was stunned. Not only him, but everyone present was confused. Is that it? Yibo smiled and said, "That's enough. This contained object is a piece of candy, but the total amount is limited. Once it is eaten up, will appear on the CAPC production line of a certain sugar factory or dessert processing factory. It is troublesome to find it every time, so we have to save some. Keep it contained as long as possible. Anyway, it's the same no matter how much you eat, you just need to get his sugar content." Seeing that everyone was still silent, Yibo laughed and said, "Lick it, what are you still doing? Don't worry, this paper is edible. It's okay if you swallow a piece of it. You just need to feel the obvious sugar content to have that characteristic." With Yibo's words, everyone started to slurp the candy in a hurry, and some even ate the paper directly. Then, vomit. Damn it! Hiss, isn't this too sweet? As everyone sipped the sugar, at first I thought that small piece of sugar didn't have much sweetness, so I needed to taste it carefully and savor it carefully. Who knew that after entering the mouth of this sugar, it was called sweet, so sweet, so sweet. It's so sweet. It's like having a big piece of saccharin in it. Damn. You're telling them to taste it carefully to feel the sugar? Damn it, everyone's faces wrinkled up. Yibo and the teaching assistants were all smiling. Obviously, they had experienced similar things back then. Now, not only did they not hold up their umbrellas, they came over and took them all down. Soon, along with Yibo with the explanation, everyone also understood what this air wall meant. After being infected with this characteristic, you can create an air wall with your thoughts, releasing a biofield through sugar, and this biofield is only useful for the air. If you want to, it is as hard as it is, and as soft as you want it to be. This thing is indeed harmless. But it does not mean that there is no price. The price is that you need to continuously consume sugar. Moreover, it still consumes a lot of sugar. So, in the following days, they will eat a lot of sugar almost every day. If the sugar in the body is low to a certain extent, the air wall cannot be created. Of course, although the properties are safe, accidents are not without them. For example, when you were flying through the void, you suddenly ran out of sugar, and then you fell directly from the air and killed yourself. Therefore, their next training direction is to judge how big, how strong, and how long they can make the air wall. Except in addition, you also need to understand how long your own sugar can last. What kind of effects a piece of sugar can have, etc., need to be distinguished. Of course, this stance on sweetness actually has a price. That is, their sweetness sensitivity it has been turned up. The sweetness that used to be moderate will now feel too sweet. No matter how sour the orange is, it will be turned into a sweet orange by the increased sweetness. Although this is a cost, it is a side effect. However, compared to other containment objects, this is really nothing. As for eating a lot of sugar in the long term, there is no way, you have to eat it even if you don't eat it. As for the air wall and the sweetness attitude, in fact, this thing is related to like the human body, the intensity can be increased with exercise. Of course, like the human body, there is an upper limit, but everyone is different. Then, the instructor and the others began to demonstrate the ethereal transition in front of Mo Kyung and others. Step on the air and walk up step by step. There are also instructors riding motorcycles and driving in the air, which is extremely cool. Of course, this air wall can even be used as a means of attack and defense. It can also refract bullets, sweep objects from the air, etc. Auxiliary usage. At the same time, the instructors also use the flexible air wall and the rigid air wall. One soft and one hard, one soft and one hard. Each has its own magical effect. And Yibo and others also showed the blue and white social style sugar. One sugar can maintain the appearance of a wall of air for 1 second. How far can you create a wall of air? That depends on each person's biofield. If someone's biofield is strong, it can be released at a distance. If someone's biofield extends very short, it can only be produced at close range. Even, in a truly heaven-defying operation, you can step on the air wall and fly like a cloud and mist. But this consumes so much sugar that even the instructor didn't show it. Therefore, most of the club members will only step in the air and in the air, thus saving sugar. Finally, Yibo concluded in short, the air wall is good for everything, but it consumes too much sugar and needs to be replenished frequently. Therefore, how to maximize its use and achieve greater results with the least amount of sugar is your future training the main purpose. As for the usage, there are too many, and there are many tricks, you can develop them yourself slowly. Amo Kyan thought thoughtfully. Want to save sugar? That's true. When flying through the void, only part of it would be stepped on. If the rest were made, it would be a complete waste. Okay, it's too early for you to talk about going to heaven. You have to start from the most basic and tread water, Yibo said, and asked everyone to try it in the lake. Obviously, at first, no one succeeds. Some people even struggle to form an air wall. Even the best ones can only hold on for a moment, hang in the air for a second, and then fall. Amo Kyan was very surprised. Isn't this too damn difficult? Amo Kyan could feel that something existed, and could even control it. He can create a wall of air, but it's different when he steps on it. Yibo and the others were stepping on stone slabs, but what he was stepping on was like thin ice, which would collapse as soon as he stepped on it. Amo Kyan tried several more times, but it was still choked and unstable, and he fell into the water as soon as he stepped on it. As for techniques, there is no skill at all, it just doesn't taste sweet enough. Then Yibo asked someone to deliver 2 carts of candy. They are sugar pills the size of ping pong balls. Just smelling them makes the air feel sweet, enough for 2 trucks. The key is, these 2 trucks are only enough for 1 week. Good guy. Everyone's scalp was numb, but there was nothing they could do. If they wanted to control the air wall, they had to eat sweets until they died, but they wouldn't die anyway. Just as soon as they ate, their faces wrinkled up. It's so sweet. This thing is sweeter than the contained object, so sweet that it's so bitter. Some people even cried. Used to it? Yibo laughed and said, now, take advantage of this sweetness to train quickly and remember this feeling. Everyone bit the bullet and started trying. The same goes for Amo Kyan. He created an air wall, and then jumped on the air wall with a slight jump, as if he was stepping on the ground, so stable, hovering steadily in mid-air. The same goes for others. Some people have 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow, but they can barely hold on. Amo Kyan also started to try to walk on the water. However, it didn't take long before he fell into the water again. Almost 1 shot per minute. After falling into the water, he came ashore obediently, eating sweets while practicing. Soon, Amo Kyan mastered the skills, and even discovered that this air wall can also be shot. The invisible material of the biofield, but being connected to itself, is like a part of itself, just like Amo Kyan has an invisible bow, and that arrow is the air wall he created. In addition to being anchored in one place, the air wall itself it moves within the biological field. Mo Kyung's biological field is about half a meter outside the body. A normal person's air wall can move freely half a meter outside the body. Of course, the air wall can also be thrown out, or even thrown out. The air wall can still last for a while, as long as there is enough sugar. Since it can be thrown out, it means that this thing is Mo Kyung's arrow. This is his invisible air cannon. Although the actual combat significance is not as good as a gun now, but with just practice, he can completely play with the air wall. Soon, Mo Kyung thought of the corresponding operation in his mind. He could shape the air wall into the shape of an arrow, and then shoot it out, and then he would do it again. Grab this arrow, fly in the air, and won't stop until you reach your goal. He can also wrap the air wall around the human body to form a coat, allowing absolute hit to choose the landing point, and he himself will be wrapped and fly. In this way, he can even fly. There is no need to rely on sugar to move the air wall. Well, the idea is good. But the actual problem is that he needs to maintain the stability of the air wall. It is easy to not have enough sugar. Mo Kyung is becoming more and more familiar with it, and is not limited to eating one candy. He stuffed a dozen candies directly into his stomach, and carried 24 candies on his body. With so many candies, Mo Kyung could only hold on for about 5 minutes. Flying. Laughing, he can't fly at all now. So, Mo Kyung and others kept practicing like this, and 3 days passed by in a flash. And everyone basically ate up the 2 trucks of candy. Fortunately, at last, some people will not fall into the water again. They can stay on the water running freely. But that's all. Yibo asked them to fight each other, and sure enough, they were revealed. In just 1 minute, they fell into the water, and even the winner fell into the water. The only clean one, Mo Kyung, was the only one. There was nothing he could do. Others only vaguely sensed the position of the air wall, but he, with an absolute hit, could directly locate the air wall. Yibo looked at Mo Kyung, thought for a moment, and put a he through the candy 15 meters in the air and said with a smile, Mo Kyung, try to get this candy. Mo Kyung took a look and felt confident. He knew that Yibo's biological position was at least 15 meters away. After thinking about it, he jumped up directly, as if he was doing Qigong, stepping in the air, jumping horizontally repeatedly, grabbing the candy, and another he backflips and falls freely. Before he can land on the ground, there seems to be a slope in mid-air, buffering him, allowing him to land on the ground unexpectedly. Yibo's eyes lit up when he saw it. When others saw it, their faces were full of shock. Mo Kyung, why are you progressing so fast? Mike asked in astonishment. Be talented, Mo Kyung smiled and threw a candy into his mouth. Is this a feature? Where is the talent? Mike was stunned. However, Mo Kyung smiled and said there is indeed no talent in being specific, but this characteristic determines that whoever is sensitive to sweetness will have excellent qualifications in this area. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 325. At this moment, countless people looked at what happened in the picture in amazement. Good guy, is this based on sugar content? This is actually based on sugar content? Doesn't it mean that all people with diabetes are geniuses? I know why Mo Kyung said he was gifted, he must be diabetic. Gee, are you all talented? By the way, won't these members all get diabetes after they retire? Can you please stop talking about diabetes? Nausea. How disgusting. At this time, countless people were complaining, watching the discussion of those guys speechlessly. It was simply unsightly. As for whether diabetics are geniuses, I don't know, at least Mo Kyung is definitely not diabetic. As for these blue and white society after the members retire, will they get diabetes? I don't know. At this time, in the picture, Along with Mo Kyung's so-called aptitude theory, people around him also subconsciously thought about it. It seems that it is really like this. Normal air walls have no talent at all, but their sensitivity to sweetness varies. Some people eat a candy and feel it is very sweet, so sweet that it is cloying. Some people eat a candy and feel it is normal. This is the difference between people. And for the same sugar, whoever finds it sweeter is a genius. Mo Kyung is like this, very sensitive to sweetness, so in this regard, he is naturally a genius. Mo Kyung, do you have diabetes? Du Xiao was surprised. Mo Kyung, you are the one with diabetes. He was speechless. How did Du Xiao get related to diabetes? At this time, Yi Bo explained with a smile, this is actually the same as the strengthening of taffy stone. Geniuses are more geniuses, and people are more powerful than others. There is a gap between them. When this gap is enlarged, it becomes even more obvious. Mo Kyung smiled and said nothing. Is he a genius? Well, maybe, but he doesn't know about sugar. Because, he actually made rapid progress by cheating with absolute hits. However, in fact, it is the same, as long as the effect is achieved. Looks like it's time to choose a group of people to go cliff jumping, Yi Bo laughed. Jump off a cliff, the students were stunned. They had just learned how to run on water, and now they are about to jump off a cliff. Your talents are clear at a glance, and some of you are already ready for the next stage of training. Yi Bo looked at everyone with a smile. And everyone looked at Mo Kyung subconsciously. The others were actually the same, except Mo Kyung's waist disc was a little more protruding. They thought it was just Mo Kyung. Who knows? Yi Bo took out a list and started reading, 7 people in a row. Among them, Du Xiao, Mike, and even the only remaining female student Yan Wei were there. Including Mo Kyung, there were 8 people. These 8 people can already reach the next stage. Mike was a little confused. Instructor, I don't even know that. I think I am sweeter than others. How did you tell? Yi Bo shook the list in his hand and said with a smile, all the candies you receive are recorded. Who eats more and who eats less is clear at a glance. Well, you can tell the talent by looking at who eats more and who eats less. If the progress is about the same, the one who eats less will naturally be the genius. But Mo Kyung is very strange. He eats more and eats less. Twice as much as others, but he managed to reach heaven. Well, in the end, it comes down to the fact that Mo Kyung is a genius and works really hard, so it's understandable that he ate so many extra candies. After saying that, Yi Bo took 8 people with him. He left. The rest of the people were naturally still practicing here. Soon, Mo Kyung and the others were brought to a lonely peak nearly 1,000 meters above sea level. Yi Bo took away 7 assistants and each of them flew a plane. The students also got on a plane each. Mo Kyung was asked to get on the Yubo plane. The 8 people dispersed and originally planned to board the plane, but unexpectedly, they were tied up directly. Armpits, ribs, crotch, hands, all tied up, tied tightly. The cable was tied behind everyone, tied to the plane. Before everyone could recover. If you want to jump off a cliff, you must first learn to climb a mountain. If you can't even climb a mountain, then jumping off a cliff is asking for death. Stand firm, the plane is about to take off, Yi Bo laughed, and the next second. Whoosh! The plane took off directly and just hung them up the cliff. Mo Kyung felt the rope he was tied with tightened, and his body flew up uncontrollably. Ahead, densely packed tall trees blocked the way. The plane could pass by, but those of them hanging below could only stare. Soon, they understood what they were going to do. If you don't want to hit a tree, you can only step on the air and let your height rise above the forest. Mo Kyung gritted his teeth and without saying a word, he stamped his feet to avoid the tree in front of him. Sometimes he even jumped 5 meters high to avoid the tree directly. Although being tied up is embarrassing, walking in the air is really cool. Seeing Mo Kyan easily dodging various trees, Yibo stuck his head out of the window and said with a smile, "Not bad, I knew this wouldn't embarrass you." "Hey, fly the plane well," Mo Kyan stared. His fortune and life depended on Yibo. If Yibo's brain twitched, his life would really be in danger. However, Yibo smiled. "Don't worry, this road, I can open it with my eyes closed." But I didn't want to. As soon as I finished speaking, bang bang bang, a series of crashing sounds suddenly sounded. Of course it was not Yibo. As soon as Mo Kyan turned his head, he saw Mike hitting the tree. Not only Mike, but everyone else was not in any better condition. They would be hit by the tree more or less. They are really incomparable to Mo Kyan. There is no way, Mo Kyan is cheating. Then, the next scene is terrible to watch, hitting trees from time to time. It is extremely miserable. It flew for a full 5 minutes before stopping. "Get off. We haven't even gone up the mountain yet, we've only reached the foot of the mountain." Even Mo Kyan was a little injured. There was no way, Mo Kyan's hands were tied and he couldn't replenish sugar. He was inevitably bumped twice when he got to the back. Looking at the rescue station at the foot of the mountain, okay, now I understand that these guys had planned it for a long time. Mo Kyan's injury was a little more serious. If it was more serious, he even had a fracture. Fortunately, the injury was not serious. The medical conditions of the Blue and White Society are also top-notch. After a few hours of rest at the rescue station, they will be full of energy again. As for Yibo's purpose, it is actually to force them. They are indeed sensitive to sweetness, but they can't just ignore everyone. They have to be forced like this. Only by forcing them can they eat more sweets and progress faster. If you don't want to be killed, then practice more. The better the talent, the more strictly they must be treated. Come on, it's almost time to rest, it's time to continue. At this time, Yibo clapped his hands and spoke with a smile. Everyone was stunned, then looked forward, and then they all took a breath. Damn it! What the hell? Everyone's scalp was numb. But as I saw, there were densely packed obstacles on the road ahead. Those obstacles were obviously designed. There were unusually tall billboard-like steel plates, and even barbed brackets swinging back and forth. I also saw some barbed wire fences. Needless to say, I also know that this barbed wire fence must be electrified. How the hell is this going up a mountain? This is simply a mountain of knives. Their scalps are numb. Before, it was just a tree. If you couldn't get over it, you could only bump into it. But this is different, it's either a steel plate, a barbed wiper, or a barbed wire. If this is touched, just thinking about it makes my scalp numb. Gone, Yibo smiled, stepped on the accelerator, and the plane took off instantly. Damn you, Mo Kyan was startled. He quickly swallowed the candy in his mouth, felt the pulling sensation, and looked up again. Damn it, he was about to hit the steel plate. Bang bang bang. A dull crash sounded. 3 people were instantly blocked by the first checkpoint. Mo Kyan looked back and was frightened. Without saying a word, he jumped into the sky. The wiper in front made him even more frightened. It was about to arrive. He calculated the distance again, calculated the distance between himself and the rope, and hurriedly jumped over it. As for the barbed wire fence further ahead, he took a deep breath, jumped out in one step, and crossed it in an instant. Every step was filled with fear, fearing that he would hit it. He was even more afraid that his own rope would be cut. He was in a cold sweat, let alone others. The wiper behind them killed 2 more people. The barbed wire fence was electric. One person just rolled his eyes. Fortunately, Mo Kyan finally reached the top of the mountain before the sugar ran out. At this point, Amokayan breathed a long sigh of relief. Although he made it through, it was still extremely thrilling, and he had dozens of wounds the air conditioning was blowing. Fortunately, we finally reached the top of the mountain. There is also a rescue station on the top of the mountain. And there are many people on the top of the mountain. They are all here to exchange their experiences. When Amokayan came, he saw so many people, also stunned. So many people, he asked while bandaging the wound at the ambulance station. It's normal. After all, there is only one place for cliff jumping on Extreme Island. If you want to practice cliff jumping, you can only come here, Yibo got off the plane and explained with a smile. Your blood is really cold, Yibo rubbed his hands and moved slightly away from Amokayan. Although Amokayan's wound was bandaged, there was still air conditioning all over Amokayan's body, and he couldn't bear it. Are these from the first few groups? Amokayan asked. Well, it's a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, Yibo laughed. You talk like farts, Amokayan was speechless. At this moment, he finally saw an acquaintance in the crowd. The man had a shaved head and a tall build. He had just come out of the rescue station. And there was a thick bandage around his belly. A circle of bandages, and when he saw Amokayan, his eyes immediately lit up. Ha ha ha, Amokayan, I just said you were coming, right? These guys still don't believe it. This person is none other than you. As Uxian shouted, everyone also looked over. Oh, I didn't expect you to come up before me, Amokayan looked at it and was a little surprised. Zero asking for flowers. He actually knew that their 6th group and Uxian's 5th group actually started training on the same day. Because they took the exam on the same day. And Uxian was better than him in the morning. I can only say that Uxian is really talented in this area. However, Uxian's mouth twitched and he smiled bitterly. Don't compare with me in this aspect. My father has given me hardships since I was a child. The food and vegetables are also extremely bitter. When you eat, you have to mix it with bile, and you drink bitter tea. Even the breast milk you drank when you were a child was mixed with coptis. Until a few days ago, there was no trace of it. Have you ever tasted sweetness? As soon as these words came out, the corners of Amokayan's mouth twitched crazily. Good guy, it's not easy to have a father like this. This is completely training Uxian as a club member. He has been preparing for it all his life, until the first few days ago. Eat sweets and eat the contained object at once. I'm afraid Uxian would have been moved to tears. After enduring hardship and sourness all his life, he finally tasted the sweetness. As the two of them talked, Uxian soon introduced Amokayan to Amokayan. Give others. Oh, Amokayan, you are the man who beat Uxian bald. Yes, a guy who also applied ointment came forward and said with a smile. Don't lie, I shaved it myself, Uxian stared. However, no one paid attention to him. He was the one who was beaten. Uxian glanced at the corner of his mouth, but he had no choice but to introduce to Amokayan. This is the first group of the session. First place, 119 Alexander. Oh. Amokayan looked at Alexander. Well, he felt a little familiar. Soon, he remembered that when he took the preliminary test, this guy was shooting the 7-color board. This is the 119. Soon, Amokayan was also here. I probably learned a lot. Those who train here not only have to jump off the cliff, but also run into the sky. It is said that in the 3rd stage, they will also go to the clouds to train. But you have to be careful of being struck by lightning. So you must wear insulating clothing in advance. But this Alexander was still struck by lightning, and this injury was the result of being struck by lightning. Well, the main thing is that this guy ran to the clouds to leapfrog all night long. It was just pretentious. At the same time, not only the clouds, there are also things like cliff shooting, 3-dimensional fighting, flying cars, etc. Each of them is a cool operation, each one is more extreme than the other. Even if you are not careful, you may fall to death. Fortunately, the instructors and medical conditions here are complete. Unless you commit suicide, it is really impossible to die. And Mo Kyan, the last one to come up, is obviously the worst among this group of people. He knows almost everything. Kyan. Then I looked into the distance. I saw people jumping down there from time to time, and I was amazed. Mo Kyan, you are the only one in our group who went up the mountain, so you need a partner here, and you can only train with other groups, Yibo said. It must be me, haha, Uxian came over and said with a smile. Mo Kyan turned his head and looked at Uxian doubtfully. It's him. Yibo nodded and said he is also the only one in the fifth group who went up the mountain. He also rested for a day when he went up the mountain. He hasn't started training yet, and his progress is the same as you. Oh? Is this first step a leap of faith? How to take this leap of faith? Mo Kyan looked at Yibo. Yibo led them to the edge of the cliff and explained leap of faith is just another name. It is actually a training for safe landing. You must fall anywhere without shortage of sugar. It's enough to stay conscious and not fall to death. So simple, Mo Kyan was surprised. Hee, Yibo smiled and said nothing. Uxian said, easy. Haha, it's easy to go up the mountain but hard to go down the mountain. You just need to use your strength to go up the mountain, but you also need to slow down the speed and slow down the impact when going down the mountain. Uxian naturally understands after watching here for a day. Of more. Mo Kyan frowned. At this time, Yibo and the instructors from the fifth group also began to teach the two their experience. There are two types of leaps of faith. One is to fix a rigid air wall on the body surface to form a protection, use friction to continuously slow down and glide, and finally land steadily. It's like condensing the wall of air into a pair of wings, a pair of gliders. Moreover, this hang glider is still controllable. When the speed is high, you can adjust the stress surface to achieve a safe landing, but only if you have enough sugar. The second type is to generate a flexible air wall, just like an air bed used for jumping off a building, slowing down the impact and allowing for a safe landing. As for which one they choose, that doesn't matter, just land safely. They can even be used interchangeably. I probably understand. Mo Kyan and Uxian walked to the edge of the cliff. Are you ready? Mo Kyan looked at Uxian. Yupu, Ijiangpuo, Uxian smiled. Mo Kyan's face darkened. Let's go. Mo Kyan kicked Uxian directly. Oh shit, Mo Kyan, you're doing a sneak attack. You can't afford it? You little piece of trash. At this moment, Uxian's words gradually dissipated in Sergeant Feng. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 326. Tisk, this Uxian is trying to make me laugh to death. Unexpectedly, the members of the Blue and White Club have been trained to such an extreme. Not to mention all kinds of normal skills, even this air wall has to be played well. These guys are probably top-notch talents in the world of immortality. What a proud man of heaven. Indeed, with the reinforcement of taffy stone, anyone can become a genius or a monster. If this Blue and White society were in a world of cultivating immortals, tisk tisk, I can already think of the heaven-defying existence that spans the universe and the multiverse. This is how powerful the entire sect is. If anyone is pulled out at random, he will be an unparalleled monster. Fortunately, they are all a group of ordinary people. Even if they train their bodies to the extreme, they are still just mortals after all. That's right, These guys from the Blue and White Club are so terrifying, they're simply unbelievable. However, if they were in the world of cultivating immortals, it would be normal, right? The Blue and White Society relies on contained objects to make themselves stronger, and uses taffy stone to strengthen themselves, which finally achieves this effect. In the normal world, they are just ordinary people, incomparable to real monsters. Indeed, if the world of cultivating immortals also contains objects, the Blue and White Society may not be as powerful as other cultivating sects. Who knows, maybe there is such a containment object in a certain world of cultivators. At this time, everyone was talking about it. Looking at the picture, Mo-Kyan and Uxian were flying together. In the picture, as Mo-Kyan and Uxian jumped off the cliff was very high, but Uxian was enough. After holding on for 28 seconds, he finally landed on the anti-collision net below. As for Mo-Kyan, his manipulation of the air wall was incredible. He directly spread his air wings and glided in the air. It took a long time until Uxian landed on the anti-collision net. Finally, Mo-Kyan glided and slowly landed on the ground. Wanjie looked at 390 and was a little stunned. He never expected that Mo-Kyan could be so evil in controlling the air wall. Have you studied it? Tell me, is your father a member of the commune? Your father is not, is your grandfather not? Uxian grabbed Mo-Kyan and asked wildly. Mo-Kyan was speechless. Okay, is everything okay? It's okay, try again, Mo-Kyan said with a smile. I still don't believe it, Uxian gritted his teeth and went up the mountain again. Just like that, time flew by. Mo-Kyan and Uxian practiced cliff jumping almost every day. Later, both of them almost mastered cliff jumping. If you go down, you won't fall to death. You can directly arm yourself with a hang glider and glide to the ground. At the back, Mo-Kyan and Uxian began to practice aerial combat again. This aerial combat is called three-dimensional combat. In the past, it only existed on land. Attacks came from above, from the front, back, left, right, and from all directions. As the two became more proficient in using the air wall, there were attacks from all directions. Fighting in the sky, I am becoming more and more familiar with it. In the past, to dodge, I just retreated or jumped up. But now to dodge, there is an additional step of falling. Not only Mo-Kyan and Uxian, they can see that there are countless people above the cliff. Students fight in pairs, with some jumping into the sky from time to time, and others falling down from time to time. The surrounding environment is completely created by oneself, whether it is a favorable fighting environment or anything else. In short, it is all at your fingertips. While other students are fighting, they are still there. Each had their own victory or defeat. But when they got to Mo-Kyan's side, they fought on Uxian's side throughout the whole process. In the past, on land, Mo-Kyan and Uxian could still fight back and forth, but in the sky, Uxian was completely overwhelmed by Mo-Kyan. Mo-Kyan was crushed. No way, Mo-Kyan was so good at using the air wall. In the sky, whoever uses the air wall well is the boss. Mo-Kyan can even wrap the air wall around his fist, and then trigger an absolute hit, a punch blasted out, absolutely unstoppable, no one can block that fist. There are even other operations, such as air cannons, which are always successful. It can be said that with the combination of air wall and absolute hit, Mo-Kyan has already used this ability to his advantage. As for Uxian, of course he is a sparring partner. He was beaten by Mo-Kyan so much that he almost doubted his life. However, although Mo-Kyan showed his ability, he knew very well that even if he played after all, the lethality is still not as good as guns. Air cannons are cool, but if a real howitzer comes over, can your air cannon be able to withstand it? As for the biofield, will it grow as time goes by? Yes, it can indeed grow. But that is because the growth was fast in the early stage, but in the later stage, the growth slowed down. Otherwise, those club members eat sweets all day long. Why don't we see them using the air wall as an output ability instead of an auxiliary ability? To put it bluntly, the air wall, it's still a bit useless, with high consumption and low output. It can only be used as an auxiliary ability. However, contact is still necessary. Don't give up just because the output of this thing is small. As long as it is used well, it may have miraculous effects. Members are not lucky. Only by doing your best in all aspects can you have a chance of survival. Not only aerial combat, aerial speeding, aerial frog jumping, aerial shooting, etc., Mo Kyung is also training. In this way, after half a year, Mo Kyung has become very strong. As for Du Xiao and others, naturally, they all started to go up the mountain and started various exercises. On this day, Mo Kyung and Uxian just finished their three-dimensional fighting. As soon as they drove to the top of the mountain, they saw a group of newcomers leaping on the clouds. See. At this scene, Mo Kyung couldn't help but smile knowingly. At the beginning, he was very frustrated. The frog leaping in the clouds was a test of his proficiency in the air wall, and he might fall from the sky if he was not careful. Of course, if you fall, you will most likely not die, but you will inevitably be scolded by the instructor. At this moment, Mo Kyung heard roars coming from the clouds, saying, "You are the worst class I have ever brought up." At this moment, he saw that the two of them jumped from the sky and fell down. Fortunately, those two people quickly stabilized their bodies. "Climb up yourself, up on the cloud," the instructor shouted. The two laughed bitterly. They had no choice but to jump up. The result? Boom, the two people seemed to have hit something at the same time, tumbling in the air, and then fell straight down. Just seeing this scene, Mo Kyung knew that the two of them had created a new landing point for the air wall, but instead of stepping on it, I bumped into it. This situation is very common. Even if you are a formal member, you may make this kind of mistake. After all, the air wall is invisible, and you will even step on the air when you are mentally exhausted. Generally speaking, in this case, the coach will not save him, because even if he falls, he will not fall to death. As long as he does not fall to death, bandages it, takes a rest, he can continue training, and he can even learn a lesson to avoid this kind of thing from happening in the future. However, this time is different. Because someone hit his head. It can be seen that one student has fainted in the air and fell straight down. The other student was a little better, but just hit the middle of the crowd and curled up in pain. That cloud, the instructor who got on took one look, and without saying a word, he went to save him. Naturally, he went to save the unconscious student first, and couldn't care about the other one. Mo Kyung took one look, and without saying a word, he also rushed down, speeding up to chase the other student. 1. Generally speaking, when you are awake, it doesn't matter even if you make a mistake and fall from the cloud. Those who can train on the cloud have already practiced the leap of faith. But it won't work if they are not fresh. Needless to say, those who are unconscious, if he fell, he would probably fall to death. And the one who hit the middle of the crowd was twisted in pain, half of his body was paralyzed, and he couldn't exert any strength. In this case, help was naturally needed. And Mo Kyung, look, when he arrived, he wouldn't just sit idly by. He had this ability, and at the same time, rescuing people could also increase his experience. So, he went down without saying a word. Soon, he was close to the young man. "Catch me." Mo Kyung stretched out his hand, grabbed the man's shoulder, unfolded the air wall, began to buffer, and maintained a parallel state. The man was very delicate, his eyes were closed, his face was pale in pain, and his lower body was bleeding. Mo Kyung was hurt just looking at it. Finally, he landed on the ground with this person, looked at the blood, tugged at the corner of his mouth, and said, "Brother, well, you can be cured even if you have some injuries, and I can transplant it to you as it is without any hindrance. Normal use, just without children." Transplant what? It wasn't until this moment that the man came back to his senses. His face was pale, and Qing Ling asked, "Well? You are a woman." Mo Qian was startled when he heard that person's voice. "It's not that there are no female students on Extreme Island, there are many. And their sixth group also has a girl, Yanwei. There are also many other groups. The reason why there is only one Yanwei left in their group is simply because they are pure newcomers and have a high elimination rate. Normal. But these female students, as they train for a long time, become bold and fierce. Each one of them looks like a man. If the voice is more neutral, it will be even harder to tell the difference." At this moment, the girl in front of Mo Qian was silent. He really didn't know she was a woman. "Can you jump by yourself?" Mo Qian looked at the girl in front of him and took over the previous one with a smile. "Let me try," she said, stood up, endured the pain, but still couldn't. She was shaking with pain every time she jumped. "Forget it." Mo Qian picked up the girl and jumped into the sky with her. "Thank you very much," the girl smiled. "It's okay. In fact, you can't fall to death. There are people below. I'm here to save you. In fact, it's just to gain experience." Mo Qian said it didn't matter, 0. But the girl didn't think so. She said, "My name is Weiyan. You must be from the previous term, right?" Well, it was indeed from the previous session. "We are about to enter the third year of special training," Mo Qian nodded. "What to train for in the third year?" Weiyan asked curiously. "Have no idea," Mo Qian shook his head. He really didn't know. He would have to ask Alexander about the specific situation. Alexander was in the first group of their session. He was a few months behind them. He had already started the third year. Special training. As for his second year exam, in fact, he could have passed it a long time ago, but he just didn't take it. Finally, as he returned to the heights, he saw the instructor holding another person and watching Mo Qian bring him up. "This," he said with a smile, "it's okay, Mo Qian, unlike me in this academy, they are all too young." In Mo Qian's class, Mo Qian is really one of the celebrities. Mo Qian's marksmanship is incredible, even better than the students in the first group. Not only the students know Mo Qian, but many instructors also know Mo Qian. Poor. Now Mo Qian can save people. There is no doubt that Mo Qian is very skilled in using his air wall. Good. Mo Qian said with a smile, "These two probably can't hold on any longer. Let's send them to the infirmary. They can just go by themselves," the instructor said, and immediately let go of the man in his arms. The male student was speechless. Hua Yin was also speechless. "You kid, you can do it," Uxian said with a smile. "Just saving people, accumulating experience points," Mo Qian said with a smile. "Gee, I think you just show off your holiness in front of others, and you want to show off, right?" Uxian grinned. "Then let you come next time." Mo Qian glanced at Uxian. "Come on, forget it, I'm too lazy to make an extra trip. If it can't be saved, it will be even more embarrassing." Uxian curled his lips. The two of them walked further and further away with the sound of talking. Behind him, Huayan was still shouting, wanting to know Mo Qian's name. Unfortunately, Mo Qian and the others had already gone far. Soon, they found Alexander in the clouds. At this time, Alexander was lying on the clouds, holding up a sniper rifle, aiming at the target on the ground and pulling the trigger. As for whether he hit or not, I don't know. It's too far away now. They are almost 10,000 meters above the ground. Whether they can hit or not depends on luck. Did it hit? Amo Kyung Soon. Have no idea, Alexander shook his head. Hit, hit, however, at this moment, his teammates' shouts came from his headset. Looks like you're in luck, Alexander said with a smile. Sharp, Amo Kyung praised. Tisk, are you trying to hurt me or are you really praising me? The corner of Alexander's mouth twitched. As we all know, Amo Kyung's marksmanship is unmatched by anyone in his class. It is unparalleled. When it comes to being powerful, Amo Kyung is really powerful. No matter how far away he is, no matter whether he can see it or not. One shot, it will definitely hit. I even doubt whether you have the characteristic of 3.1 absolute hit, Alexander said with emotion. Amo Kyung. Stop talking nonsense, I heard, you are looking for me, Amo Kyung asked. Yes, it was Alexander who came to him first, not him who went to Alexander. Alexander nodded and said, do you know what the third year of training is? Actual combat, Amo Kyung asked. That's right, it's actual combat. Alexander nodded and said solemnly, and it's the kind of actual combat with contained objects, facing the contained objects directly. Seeing Alexander so solemn, Amo Kyung and Uxin couldn't help but look at each other. Someone died, Amo Kyung asked. That's not it? Alexander shook his head. At critical moments, the instructors and mobile units will take action to clear the containment objects or tell us how to deal with them. Oh, is that so? Amo Kyung thought. Since Alexander said that the instructors will sort it out, that means these containment objects are still controllable containment objects. They have been contained by the club and are being used for actual combat exercises. However, for students, these containment objects are unknown and also dangerous. After 2 years of training, their physical fitness, skills, etc. are almost the same as those of regular club members. What is missing now is the experience of the members in containing the contained objects. Therefore, it is inevitable to contain objects in actual combat. The environment is chosen by the club, the location is chosen by the club, and the containment objects are also chosen by the club. Anyway, as long as the training purpose can be achieved. So, how are you doing now? You look very stressed, Amo Kyung looked at Alexander and asked curiously. He. Alexander smiled bitterly and said, you know what? I sacrifice every time. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 327. We were finally contacted and taken into custody. Speaking of which, this Alexander was pretty good, but he actually died. Is this containment project so difficult? It's normal to be difficult. After all, it's a contained object. You don't know what characteristics it has at all. He might just die. Until now, I know how incredible Wanjie is. If Wanjie were in this world and had gone through the training of club members, do you think it would be possible to directly see through the characteristics of all contained objects? Wanjie's information perception is completely a kind of characteristic. If Wanjie is here, let alone, it is really possible to see through all the characteristics? No, let alone Wanjie. I just want to ask, is the containment mission so difficult? It's really difficult. Alexander is pretty good, but he still sacrifices himself every time. I don't know our method of cultivating immortals. Can we figure out the characteristics of this contained object? Figure out the properties. I feel so uncomfortable. How can the natural side compare with the abnormal side? There is no comparison at all. Contained objects are completely above the laws of nature. Don't saints also count? Saint? Saints are indeed powerful, but these two are not part of the same system? A saint is a saint on the natural side, a saint of heaven, but what about the contained objects? It is a bug in the way of heaven, an anomaly in the way of heaven, and it is not under the control of heaven. At this time, countless people were discussing and sighing. But what they saw in the picture was accompanied by Alexander saying that he sacrificed every time. Mo Kyung and Uxin were stunned. But soon, they also understood. This should be the judgment that Alexander died when facing the contained object. As long as the instructor did not save the situation, he would die. At this time, I heard Alexander sigh. In the past 6 months, I have experienced 6 containment missions, 6 I died every time. Do you know what that means? This means that when I become a formal member, I will probably die in the first mission. Mo Kyung frowned. Uxin also frowned. You are the number 1 in our session. Mo Kyung was a little surprised. Indeed, Alexander is the number 1. Mo Kyung's shooting can stabilize Alexander's head. In other aspects, Alexander is not weaker than Mo Kyung, and is slightly stronger than Mo Kyung in some aspects. It can be said that if given Alexander has 20 absolutely hit characteristics, and Alexander is the next Mo Kyung. But despite this, he still died? 6 times. 6 times in total, not one of them was alive? Is this containment object so weird? Well. Alexander sighed. The mission is too difficult. Of the 6 missions, only the first was due to a mistake and death, and the remaining 5 were due to necessity. If you don't persist to the end, the mission is likely to fail. Oh? So, does your death still have meaning? So, was the mission successful? Mo Kyung asked curiously. 4 of them were successfully contained. Alexander said, and those 2 failures were because the team was replaced by new people, and the new people were inexperienced, which led to the failure of the mission. Newcomer, Mo Kyung frowned and asked. Alexander smiled and said, this is also normal. At first I was a newcomer and someone else took care of me. Later I became an old man and took care of other newcomers. After all, the graduation times are different, so the turnover of personnel is relatively small. It is difficult to have long-term and stable team members to complete the task. The tasks we need to complete are actually carefully selected, and the containment objects are also specially selected for actual combat. There may even be situations where we have to sacrifice ourselves. It's the same in a real containment situation. The current death rate is about 1/2, but in real containment missions, the death rate may be a little higher. After all, no one can guarantee what the contained objects will be like, and extreme situations may also occur. Went out. With Alexander's explanation, Mo Kyung suddenly understood. Can you tell me how simulated actual combat training is? Mo Kyung asked. Well, that's what I'm here for. Let's land first, Alexander said, seeing the plane flying in the distance. When the plane arrived, Alexander jumped directly onto the plane and took a ride directly to the airport. Mo Kyung shook his head with a smile and jumped on the plane. In this area, in this route, planes fly over from time to time, bringing the new generation. The students who train here are very brave and don't care about you. When they see the plane coming, they just take a ride to the airport. 3 people were lying on the wings, and the newcomers in the cabin were dumbfounded. However, they didn't care and continued the previous topic. Alexander said in the special training in the 3rd year, there were an average of about 10 people in each team, and all of them were as a reserve member. My previous team was called Darwin Team. The captain was a student from the 3rd group in 2017. He led me as a bureau leader. After that, the captain was given to the students in the 5th group. That person took me on 4 missions and graduated, and the captain was given to the students in the 7th group. Almost every time someone leaves, someone graduates, or graduates. And every time someone leaves, new people need to be added, at least 10, and I recommended you too. So that's it? Mo Kyung and Uxin suddenly understood. They are here to attract people. Mo Kyung and Uxian are indeed outstanding in this session. There is nothing wrong with coming to attract people. Just listen, Alexander continued. Mo Kyung, Uxian, I'm not lying. Let me just talk about the situation of our Darwin team. The captain is the leader of the 7th group in the upper world. There are 6 senior students in the team. In addition, starting from 70 years ago, Darwin the team's graduation rate has always been among the top 10 in the club. The corner of Mo Kyung's mouth twitched. Top 10 in graduation rate? What the heck, there are about 10 people in a team, and 10 teams are 100 people. Where can we find 100 people? And the top 10? Isn't there only 10 teams? It is true that the graduation rates are actually about the same. Alexander said this because he actually came to fight for Mo Kyung and Uxian. Mo Kyung and Uxian are still very good, and they are the first in each group. They are very strong and can definitely do it. Go take the initiative to select other teams. However, since Alexander is here to be a lobbyist. Okay, I promise you. Mo Kyung said with a smile, the stronger the teammates, the better. We understand each other, it also saves you the trouble of getting along with other people. Team Darwin, right? Where are they training? Africa. With Alexander's voice, Mo Kyung and Uxian's faces gradually darkened. Fine, Mo Kyung said quietly, and then looked at Uxian. Uxian. Bah. He finally sighed. Seeing how reluctant the two of them were, Alexander couldn't help but laugh or cry. Africa, except that it's a little hot, is pretty good. And, actually, to be honest, Africa is not as hot as your hometown. With that said, Alexander looked at Uxian. Uxian's hometown in Guangdong is indeed hot. Mo Kyung smiled. Okay, let's take the exam first. Good, Alexander nodded and watched Mo Kyung and the others go to the examination room. Obviously, Mo Kyung and Uxian almost all passed the examinations. Mo Kyung passed the test in all tests, and he also passed the driving test easily. In terms of physical fitness, Mo Kyung was not as good as Uxian. There is no way, Uxian is cheating, but having a good father is different. However, Mo Kyung's strength has reached 1,000 kilograms. Although it is not as effective as a year ago, it is not bad. As for Uxian's strength, that's even more terrifying. It's already 1,600 kilograms. There's no other way. He has a good father. And this year's year-end exam. Mo Kyung doesn't know about Uxian's 5th group, but it's their 6th group. But no one was eliminated. I think the 5th group is about the same. At this time, in the 5th group camp gathering area, Yibo looked at everyone and said with a smile, I guess you know what you are going to do in the 3rd year. I am here. There is good news and there is bad news. Which one do you want to hear? There is no doubt that everyone chooses to hear bad news. You should suppress it first and then lift it up. After hearing bad news, you will feel depressed, but after hearing good news, your mood will naturally rise. In comparison, the bad news doesn't matter. Yibo smiled and said the bad news is that you will not be strengthened by Taffy Stone in the future. Only after you become a formal member can you maintain that genius-like state again. And, it's not always possible. As soon as these words came out, everyone nodded. This bad news is not really bad news. It is normal. They have almost practiced, so they have to leave some for others later, right? After all, there are only so many taffy stones. The reserves will eventually be used up. Of course, not only the taff stone is gone, but also the improved animal meat. So what's the good news? Mike asked. Good news. Yibo smiled and said that's right, the seafood soup is still enough. Grass. Everyone's face turned dark. What kind of good news is this? They have been vomiting after drinking seafood soup for the past 2 years. Why are they still drinking seafood soup? Amokayan thought for a while and suddenly said, actually, there is an unlimited supply of equipment, right? You boy. Yibo looked at Amokayan, a little speechless. He wanted to leave some suspense, but unexpectedly, he was interrupted by Amokayan. Not to mention, Amokayan really guessed it right. That's right, next time, you will have an unlimited supply of equipment. You will use the best guns, the best knives, the best combat uniforms, and the best communicators. In short, all the equipment is the best, Yibo said. Everyone nodded, and everyone was a little excited. When they were training, all the things were crude. When training with the air wall, they stepped on the air in various ways. It is impossible to reach the serious level. When fighting, they are not even given a set of equipment, right? At least there are paragliders and wingsuits. In this way, they have saved a lot of energy and sugar, and can better distribute the sugar. Actual combat is actual combat, all equipment is the best supply. This is what a shelter looks like. Come on, follow me to get the equipment, Yibo said, and took everyone to the research center. There are various production workshops here, which are used to produce equipment. Moreover, there are also some special equipment. For example, rings that can discharge electricity and can launch anesthesia needles, watches, etc. Just like agents. Even the various first aid medicines are among the best in the world. Steel knives that can cut through iron like mud, satellite communicators that can be implanted in the body, unlockers that can open all smart locks, etc. Wait, that combat uniform is made of cowhide, with radiation protection, heat insulation, heat preservation, pressure resistance, etc. It has everything you need. Even Blue and White Society has very convenient nanomaterials. And what is the latest stealth combat clothing? Of course, invisibility means that clothes are invisible, and there is no way to make one's body invisible. The clothes are close to the skin, made of nanomaterials, and are thinner and lighter. Wearing them is like not wearing them at all. No problem with temperature, perception, etc. It also has the function of anti-toxic substances, strong defense, and shock-absorbing effect, and it is also an insulating protective suit. It can be said that the suit has all the functions of other protective suits. Moreover, on the surface, it is just a badge, which can be retracted and retracted freely. To put it bluntly, after wearing this clothes, you can even receive high-voltage electricity with your bare hands and soak your feet in sulfuric acid. Of course, one thing you should pay attention to is that although this clothes isolates voltage, it does not insulate heat. If you touch high-voltage electricity with bare hands, you may still be burned to death. In addition, try not to touch abnormal toxins and abnormal corrosive substances. This thing can only protect against regular things, Yibo reminded. Having said that, these clothes are still quite incredible. Then, no one received 2 or 3 sets. This thing is also subject to damage and has a service life. It can be used for about half a month. Change the set. Anyway, the Blue and White Society will not care about this small problem. Soon, Amokayan went to buy the best sniper rifle in the world. The name of the gun is Black Emperor, and the effective range is 4 kilometers, with a killing range of 12,000 meters. Of course, he didn't bring this gun, he just asked the club to airdrop it when the time comes. As for other equipment, that doesn't matter, the Blue and White Club has strongholds around the world, and you can get it anywhere to the equipment. Finally, after doing all this, he put on the badge and pasted it on, changed into a normal combat uniform and arrived at the airport. Amokayan also found Uxian. Both of them wore a normal combat uniform and also had badges. Obviously everything was figured out. However, as soon as the two of them arrived at the airport, people from other teams came over and tried to win over them. Unfortunately, Amo Kyung and the others already had a team. Finally, the captain of the Darwin team came over. That was a black man with smooth muscles, as if they were made of iron. He introduced himself as Chris, the captain of the team. "You're finally here. If you don't come, I'll have to promise to others." Amo Kyung looked at Chris and smiled. "Oops, sorry, are we going to choose 4 people this time? Apart from you and UXIN, there are 2 others who haven't been discussed in advance, so I'm going to contact them first." "I'm sorry," Chris was full of apologies. "Oh? 2 more? Who?" Amo Kyung asked. "It doesn't matter who you are, but there must be a woman." "Well, I contacted the person in your group before, but she hasn't agreed yet," Chris said. "Oh? Yan Wei," Amo Kyung was stunned. The only female in their group was Yan Wei. "Yes, it's her." Chris nodded. Amo Kyung was a little strange. "Why does it have to be a woman?" "Because there are no women in our team," Chris said matter-of-factly. "What the hell?" Amo Kyung was stunned. UXIN was also stunned. Then, the 2 of them looked at Chris with strange expressions. Sensing the strange looks in their eyes, Chris knew that they had misunderstood, and hurriedly said, "Ahem, what? Some containment objects must be women. If there is no woman in the team is likely to be destroyed." "Oh? I see," Amo Kyung nodded. In fact, Chris didn't need to say it, he had also thought of it. Some of the contained objects can determine the gender, and only women can approach them, or the ones that kill men but not women. When this happens, the most powerful person in the team there is a woman. It's fine if it's an internship, but if it's really time to fight, is it possible to apply for a female member? Or, apply for a shelter that can turn a man into a woman, and then turn into a woman? Can't we continue the mission? Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 328. Tisk, as expected, this contained object is really against the heavens, and there is even a contained object that is specifically determined to be a woman. Is there such a strange storage object? Eyes opened. There's something. Awesome, looks pretty cool. Is it finally time to get an internship? The internship is great, you can see more containment objects during the internship. After practicing for an average of 2.5 years, I am finally ready to debut. 2.5 years of practice? Vigilance. Little Hiza, your chicken feet are finally exposed. At this time, countless sand sculptures in the world were discussing. And in the picture, as Amo Kyung joined the Darwin team, Yan Wei also joined the Darwin team for Amo Kyung's sake. Of course, there is also a mic. Originally, Amo Kyung wanted to invite Du Xiao, but Du Xiao joined a certain team in advance. He had no choice but to choose Mike in the end. In fact, after practicing to this point, he can pass the second-year assessment. Basically not much different, and Chris, the captain of the Darwin team, naturally did not refuse. The 4 of them just got together. One day later, Amo Kyung and others arrived in the African capital, and it was done documents. The documents are real and have official effect, but the work is fake. All they need to do is to familiarize themselves with the environment. Go around and look for abnormal events. As for when will there be a mission? Then no, got it, maybe a day. Or maybe a month. In short, missions may appear at any time. Anyway, what they have to do is to remember all the strongholds, open the contact, and be on standby at any time. At the same time, Amo Kyung, there are many situations. Although it is an internship, you can also apply for other forces, such as the transfer of peripheral personnel, such as D-class personnel testing the contained objects. Of course, D-class personnel will not actually be sent here, only verbally talking about what happened to the D-class personnel. It's like a script. This is normal, because these containment objects are all taken out and released by the agency. The agency is very clear about the condition of these containment objects. In the past, D-class personnel were also released during the initial containment. All we need to do is tell the information about the previous D-class personnel. The rest needs to be judged by newbies like them. After understanding this, Mo Kyung again meet the other members of the Darwin team one by one and introduce each other. While getting to know each other, you are also letting them get to know themselves. These old team members are on standby in various areas. If something happens, at least one of them will arrive at the scene of the incident in the shortest possible time. At this point, early the next morning, Mo Kyung and Uxian started their trip to Kenya. Well, it was said to be a trip, but it was actually part of the mission. After all, getting familiar with the environment was also a mission. However, Mo Kyung and Uxian, after just 2 rounds, news came from the communicator. An abnormality was discovered in Nakuru National Park in Rift Valley Province, and more than 200,000 wild animals died. Captain Chris said in a deep voice, Team Darwin, we will arrive at Hewlin Station number 2 within 1 hour. In addition, Alexander, you are the closest. I will give you 20 minutes. You must arrive at the scene to confirm the situation. In the communicator, Chris made arrangements in an orderly manner. Alexander, I know, I've already set off. Mo Kyung understood, we will set off immediately. Uxian add 1. Yanwei on our way. Mike got it? At this time, everyone in the communicator was talking in an orderly manner. Let's go, Nakuru. Uxian got into the car directly and looked at the navigation while starting the car. However, don't look, Nakuru is far away, at least 200 kilometers away. Mo Kyung shook his head, and immediately contacted the coordination committee directly and said straightforwardly, I am Mo Kyung, number 201-8666. My location is on South Coordinate Street in the capital. Within an hour, I want to go to Nakuru home. Immediately, a female voice sounded in the communicator, okay, no problem. Now, go to your nearest stronghold. On the way, you will see the helicopter sent by the society. The bottom is the blue and white eye logo. You boarding? Good. Please get our equipment ready, Mo Kyung then spoke. Ready. As the other party finished speaking, Uxian drove towards the stronghold without saying a word. The whole process was done in one go, very smoothly, and there was no sense of unfamiliarity like a novice. Finally, on the road, the two of them saw an armed family in the distance. The plane came over, and after seeing the blue and white eye pattern below, I got off the plane without saying a word, and ran towards the sky, higher and higher. In the end, I boarded the plane directly, saving the plane. Time to land and start again. Set off. The two boarded the plane, and Mo Kyung said directly. Tuk tuk tuk. The propeller turned, the plane turned around and flew quickly towards the national park. How convenient, Uxian sat in the cabin and sighed. Yes, it's still free, Mo Kyung also sighed with emotion. Tisk, it's also needed for the mission. I heard that if it wasn't for the mission, we would have to pay for it out of our own pockets, Uxian said. Mo Kyung nodded, he also knew this. If it is not a mission, you need to pay the money yourself. Of course, the old team members also told him that occasionally there may be fake missions to deceive people. This is obviously the case. The instructor deliberately set off a smoke bomb. On the one hand, it involves their energy, and on the other hand, it also allows them to distinguish what is a real anomaly and what is a false anomaly. As for today's situation, there is no doubt that it should be really. So many animals died, and we don't know why. Uxian said. Mo Kyung thought for a while and contacted directly via communicator, Captain, I want to know what happened in Nakuru Park, Chris. S voice came over. All the information has been sent to you. In addition, the instructor is also in the group chat. If you have anything, you can ask him directly. Oh, hearing this, Mo Kyung and Uxin looked at each other and turned on their phones. Sure enough, they saw some intelligence information about this mission. The intelligence information was very detailed, with pictures and text. It was said that there were more than 200 people in the park. There were tens of thousands of flamingos, and even various wild animals. Intelligence showed that the rangers initially heard strange noises from groups of animals. They didn't take it seriously at first, but the strange noises became more and more terrifying. Moreover, we also saw lions, hippopotamus, bison, baboons, and other animals all barking in confusion, which was scary and strange. The ranger reported the matter, was worried about the animals, and went to check, but there was no news. At this time, in the communication channel, Chris, after I got the news, I immediately asked nearby peripheral personnel to check and found a large number of animal carcasses beside Lake Nakuru. It is roughly estimated that there are at least more than 200,000 animals. Regardless of size, all animals are dead. And the death was miserable. Most of them were bleeding from the mouth and nose, and they were still twitching and screaming before they died. Mo Kyung, is it what it looks like in the photo? This photo is obviously from P. Chris. Ahem, I know it's P. This is an internship, and the 200,000 animals killed are the information we got. Mo Kyung, oh, I know, it's a live-action script. By the way, I saw that even the insects were dead in the photo, so the ranger was probably dead too, right? Yan Wei, is there a body? You can do some dissection, maybe it's some kind of virus. Chris, I don't know whether the ranger is alive or dead, so I didn't let the outside personnel go deep. Looking at the more than 200,000 animal carcasses now, it is obvious that this containment has some kind of death-killing properties. I have applied for D-level personnel, but it takes time. I asked the peripheral personnel to conduct experiments with some sheep flocks to determine an area, and also tied some sheep to the periphery to determine whether there was a diffusion effect. Alexander, are you there? Alexander, come on, Captain. The sheep tied to the outside began to twitch. This cry is a bit weird. He was screaming and twitching at the same time, as if he was sneezing. Chris, do the sheep in the periphery also show symptoms? Oops, the effect is spreading. Alexander, you should block it immediately and evacuate all residents within 10 kilometers. Alexander, I'm already doing it. Chris, is there a body at the scene? I mean, real corpses, not just intel. Alexander, yes. They are all floating on the lake. Although there are not 200,000 of them, there are 1 or 2,000 of them, most of them are fish. The lake is far away from me, at least more than a kilometer. Chris, Alexander, we need to get some corpses from the lake, and sample the water and algae, but be careful not to enter the area. Alexander understood, followed by the voice in the communicator. On the plane, Mo Kyung and Uxin listened carefully and tried to sort out the information. Soon, Alexander's voice rang again. Captain, there are no external injuries on the body, but it can be seen that he was in a state of panic before death, maybe because of a twisted mind. Chris. Leave it to the people in the research department and ask them to find out the cause of death nearby. Be careful not to let them take it away. Maybe the body is the source of infection. Fear, sneezing, death. On the plane, Mo Kyung was thinking crazily in his mind, trying to figure out what the condition of the contained object was. Uxin on the side is also making calculations. But for a while, I really couldn't think of it. Soon, 30 minutes later, Mo Kyung and Uxin got off the plane and arrived at Nakuru National Park. At the same time, all the team members arrived, all in a temporary camp 2 kilometers away from Lake Nakuru. Martial law has been enforced here for a long time. Let alone people, there are very few animals. This land should have been expropriated. As soon as Chris arrived, he looked at Alexander and asked directly, is there any special abnormality in the body? Alexander looked at the captain and everyone, and said there is nothing abnormal. After analysis, it was found that these animals it was a massive hemorrhage in the chest and a rupture of blood vessels due to insufficient blood supply to the brain. However, no unknown bacteria or viruses were found, and there were no strange ingredients. It was a typical killing effect. And this effect? Alexander pursed his lips, looked at everyone, and then said quietly, he died from sneezing too hard. Everyone? Killed yourself by sneezing? Kayan was confused. Hey guys, a new way to die has been unlocked, Uxian grinned. Can sneezing kill someone? Yanwei was surprised. Alexander said in a deep voice, everything has a degree. If you sneeze once or twice, it will be fine. However, if you sneeze continuously for a long time, until the end, the blood vessels will rupture. A painful death. As soon as these words came out, everyone nodded and understood this truth. Nothing is too much, no matter how good it is, once it is too much, it becomes a bad thing. At this moment, a voice came from everyone's earphones. D-class personnel D-80,021 and D-80,022 have arrived. That voice was very familiar to Mo Kyung. It was the voice of their instructor Yibo. Listening to Yibo's familiar voice, Mo Kyung looked around again. It was obvious that the ghost D-class personnel had only heard it verbally. At this time, just listen, Chris said, let D-80,021 enter the range immediately and ask him not to touch anything, especially the lake water and the corpse. In short, just stand there quietly. The words fell, at this time. As you can see, in the camp, the big screen flickered and a picture appeared directly. The picture was exactly that of the lake. In the picture, Instructor Yibo was wearing the clothes of a D-class personnel, and the number on the back was exactly 80,021. Tisk. Actor. An instructor, a guest D-class personnel, someone with something. Mo Chien was speechless. At this time, it was seen that Yibo began to enter the area. However, after taking a few steps, he started sneezing, completely uncontrollable. Kind of. Moreover, the sneeze got harder and harder. It was the kind of sneeze that used all its strength and made a loud sound. Can it be suppressed? Chris asked. Sneeze. As soon as Li Deseo, Bo opened his mouth, he was suppressed by the sneeze again, and he was completely unable to control it. 2 minutes later, he even spit out a mouthful of blood, and blood bubbles appeared in his nose. 4 minutes later, he fell directly to the ground and began to twitch. He even sneezed while twitching, and the blood spurted far away. Then, the live broadcast was cut off. Looking at the black screen, Mo Kyung and the other 4 newcomers were stunned. At first, Mo Kyung just thought that Yibo was just a guest appearance, but he didn't expect that it would actually have an infectious effect. It's so serious, he couldn't be dead, right? Just when Mo Kyung and others were frowning, they heard another voice coming from the communicator. D-80,021 is dead. The throat bone is broken, the air bubble tears the chest cavity, the eardrum is perforated, the brain aneurysm ruptures, and the intracranial air sample expands. This voice is the voice of Instructor Uxian. Uxian was stunned and immediately looked at Mo Kyung. This time, they probably breathed a sigh of relief. Yibo should be fine. It wouldn't be worth it if a member died because he was an intern as a D-class personnel. The follow-up should be a rescue, but it won't be broadcast. Just let them know that the D-class personnel died and how they died. After understanding this, everyone began to frown again. Sneezing until you die? Can't suppress it? this. No matter what, you have to find the source first. If you can't destroy it, take it away. Take away. This kind of area-wide containment is a disaster wherever it is brought, and its spread must be contained, or the effect of sneezing must be found to be cracked. By the way, this sneeze will last for different times depending on the physical fitness of different animals, right? Yes, the sheep had to fight for 40 seconds, but the previous D-class personnel lasted more than 4 minutes. No matter what, let's find the contained object and study its characteristics first. At this time, everyone was discussing and soon came up with a charter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 329. At this time, looking at the situation in the picture, countless people were stunned for a moment, and then started discussing. Sneezing until you die? Are there any such storage objects? What kind of weird containment is this? Can sneezing kill someone? Is it okay to beat people to death? This contained object is a bit unbelievable. Tisk, ordinary animals die in 40 seconds, but members of the club can last for 4 minutes, but what about the monks? Can a monk persist for a lifetime? You sneeze while recovering, right? Finally, the containment object was forcibly contained. Not to mention, there are many containment objects, and the competition is not enough for mortals when placed in front of monks. I feel that this containment object is average. Again, in front of a poor man, this containment object is just garbage. By the way, are all living things forced to sneeze? What about creatures without oral organs? Well, as for trees, are they the contained objects of Tianqi? Anyway, it seems that anyone with a mouth will sneeze. Sneezing? Although this thing can't kill people, disgusting people are good at it. See which sect is unhappy, just throw this thing over, hee hee. At this time, everyone was discussing and watching everything that happened in the picture. They were also amazed. At this time, in the picture, as everyone discussed a charter, Mo Kyan and others soon began to take action. They first found a remote-controlled aircraft that could be used for diving, and planned to see if there was anything at the bottom of the lake. However, before they could release the remote-controlled aircraft, they saw that the sheep not far away were also sneezing. Everyone quickly retreated. There is no doubt that this is an expansion of the scope. I don't know if this is a permanent trigger, or just sneezing within range. Some people looked at the sneezing sheep speculatively. Bring back the sheep, Chris said. Without saying a word, Mo Kyan threw out the hook and threw it more than 20 meters, and accurately pulled a sheep back. Sure enough, after the sheep was pulled over, it stopped beating instantly. I sneezed and recovered quickly. It seems that as long as it is not within the range, it will be fine. If we start sneezing, just get out of range immediately. Everyone looked at each other. This was good news. However, before they could be happy, the instructor's voice came from everyone's earphones. The sheep is dead. Everyone? Isn't the sheep fine? Why did 040 die? At this time, the instructor continued. The sheep that left the range sneezed non-stop, and finally convulsed and fell to the ground and died. Everyone was confused, looking at the sheep, and then listening to the instructor's statement in the headset. They were a little speechless. Especially the 4 newcomers, Mo Kyan, Uxian, Mike, and Yan Wei. They didn't understand the situation at all. And the rest the people were just slightly surprised and then fell silent. Seeing Mo Kyan and the others still at a loss, Chris immediately explained everything is based on the instructor's feedback. After the sheep starts sneezing, it will still sneeze even if it leaves the range, until death. Including us. As soon as these words came out, Mo Kyan and the others reacted instantly. Damn, the coach started to modify the script again. However, it is normal to think about it. The container that can be used as a training container must be controllable. What is uncontrollable is also it will not be taken out. But in order to let Mo Kyung and the others experience the serious containment situation, the instructor will be able to increase the difficulty. For example, if one of them is touched by the containment object and is seriously injured, the instructor there will also be feedback saying, if you die, what are its characteristics, and you will also be destroyed as a result, causing the containment to deteriorate, eventually spreading to the world, destroying mankind, and so on, the script. Exaggerating the efficacy of the containment. This is normal. Mo Kyung and others took a deep breath, and now they understood. Let's use a drone to investigate first, Chris said, and immediately chose a person to operate the drone and fly to the lake. Soon, the drone launched into the water and began to explore everything. The picture fed back by the drone's camera was very clear, looking for everything. What a wonderful thing. I thought it would take me a long time to find it, but at this moment. A fish flashed past the camera. Fish? Is that a fish? Mike was stunned. When everyone heard this, they also gathered in front of the screen and watched the drone search on the screen. Soon, the drone searched for a 3-meter-long big catfish swimming. That was called What a Pleasure. It seems that I have found it. This thing is either a containment object or a derivative. Alexander clicked his tongue in surprise. All the other fish were dead, but this one fish was fine. Isn't this abnormal? Catch it up, Chris ordered. Immediately, the team member controlling the drone began to use the muzzle spear gun on the drone to aim at the catfish and launch. Hua hua hua. However, the hit was a hit, but the catfish struggled desperately with amazing strength. A 3-meter-long catfish, not to mention this small drone, even a person in the water may not be able to fight this catfish. Even after the spear gun penetrated the catfish's body, it didn't even bleed. The catfish even carried the drone around. In the end, the drone completely lost control and was damaged. The screen went black and the screen completely stopped. It seems that we need a bigger machine, Alexander said. No. However, Mo Kyung smiled. If you see the camera clearly and calculate the angle, it's the same as shooting fish directly from high altitude. High altitude? Alexander turned to look at Mo Kyung, frowned and said this thing is at least more than 1,000 meters long, and the position can only be captured from the underwater lens, and the shooting place is not at the same angle as the lens. If you want to hit the target, difficult. He knew that Mo Kyung's spear skills were incredible. However, the current situation is not on an extreme island. He couldn't see clearly what was going on at the bottom of the lake. Moreover, the catfish was still swimming erratically, making it impossible to predict. Even with Mo Kyung's spear skills, no matter how contrary to heaven, it won't work. Gotta try it? Mo Kyung smiled and said, give me the most powerful spear gun, I'm going to meet it. Immediately, Mo Kyung expressed his thoughts. He was going to the sky and shot the fish vertically. After shooting, he hung it on the plane and let the plane pull the thing out. At that time, he could researched. Well, I don't know where the sneeze range is in the sky, Chris frowned. Although Mo Kyung is a newcomer, he doesn't want to lose a newcomer before he has even done anything. It should be from the sky to the earth, with the radius from front to back and left to right. Just find a bird and try it, Mo Kyung said, and soon he caught a bird and tried it in the sky. Sure enough, the distance from the sky to the lake is almost the same as the distance from the ground to the lake. Although it is expanding, the distance is the same. If macroscopically if you look at it, this area is a sphere, and the fish is the center of the sphere. After confirming the location, Mike drove the helicopter, Mo Kyung said, and the two of them went up to the sky. Mo Kyung was holding the fish. The fork was hovering about 2,000 meters above the lake, and Mo Kyan was aiming at the lake below. Only Mo Kyan is the only one. I definitely can't do this kind of thing. Alexander looked at the plane in the sky and said with emotion. Before Mo Kyan came, he was actually the sniper king in the team. But since Mo Kyan came, his sniper king has directly taken a backseat to second place. There is no way, Mo Kyan his achievements in shooting were really beyond his reach. What he couldn't do, naturally only Mo Kyan could do it. At this time, Mo Kyan's voice sounded in his headset, "Send the picture to me." Good, Alexander nodded and without saying a word passed the picture to Mo Kyan. This is a new drone, which is being chased by a black shadow remotely. Come closer, Mo Kyan said. I'm trying, Alexander said, and the controller's drone quickly approached. The camera got closer and closer, and you could even clearly see the big catfish. Mo Kyan looked at the picture on his phone, Ajj, and squinted his eyes slightly. Tell me the location of the drone, I need precise positioning, Mo Kyan spoke again. No problem, Alexander sent the radar positioning without saying a word. Mo Kyan looked at the radar and then at the lake. He moved the muzzle slightly and adjusted it slightly. How sure are you? Alexander asked. Mo Kyan squinted one eye, looked at the camera, the screen, and the radar, and said, less than 100%. Everyone is speechless. When did this happen? Are you still in the mood to joke with you? How much is it? Chris frowned and asked. Mo Kyan 90%. Everyone? Everyone was confused. However, before they could think about anything, they saw. Whoosh, on the sky, a big gun dropped from the sky, drew an arc of light, and in an instant, pierced into the lake. Poof. The next second, you can see that in the picture fed back by the drone, the huge catfish tail was pierced by a spear gun, and the barb was directly stuck in the body. Damn, that's awesome. Damn it, is this okay? Damn it, one shot into the soul. At this moment, everyone looked at what happened in the video in shock, with faces full of surprise. Even Alexander was also very surprised. Even though he already knew that Mo Kyan's shooting skills were incredible, but now they saw such incredible skills. He also felt a little weird about his marksmanship. As expected of you, Mo Kyan. You let me do it last time, right? Alex laughed. Which time? Mo Kyan asked while pulling the steel rope beside him. Just last time, we sniped at 10 bells on a tree from 2,000 meters away. It took me 1 minute, and you took 1 minute. On the surface, it was a tie. But now it seems, Tisk, you still managed to keep your strength, Alex. Ah. That time. Mo Kyan was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said, it's not that I asked you to do it, it's that I only brought 10 rounds of bullets. Yaks. Everyone? Damn it, is he really that strong? The old team members who were not familiar with Mo Kyan asked. Hearing this, Uxin, Yan Wei, and Mike just smiled. Alex smiled bitterly and said, you don't know, Mo Kyan was very good during the test. The record of gunfighting god. After taking the 7-color board test, do you know the concept? Now, after 2 more years of strengthening under the taffy eye stone, tell me, what is Mo Kyan's current shooting skills? Damn it, so strong, Chris was also surprised. Unexpectedly, there is such a protruding waist disc, some team members sighed with emotion. After 2 years of training, why is he so good? Some team members were surprised. Mo Kyan's marksmanship is simply amazing. There is no doubt that in terms of marksmanship, even in the entire blue and white club, Mo Kyan can be ranked first. Finally, with the pull of the helicopter, the steel cable was stretched straight, and the fish was also pulled up to an altitude of 50 meters. Seeing this, everyone no longer wanted to discuss it, and controlled the drone to go forward to check. The fish was still swinging in the air, and it was called crazy. It's a pity that no matter how crazy the fish in the sky is, it's just like that. With the close observation of the drone, a clearer picture appeared on the screen. It's just that. This thing looks like a ball of wool, there is humanity. Alas, it is really a catfish made of wool, with a large amount of resin-like substance on the surface, someone carefully analyzed. So, this is a woolly monster. Uxin's face was full of weirdness. Cut a little material research, Chris ordered. Soon, the drone came forward and started cutting directly. It cut a few small pieces of fish meat, and the drone returned. At the same time, in order to prevent the fish meat from having such characteristics, they stayed far away before confirming. After realizing that the fish meat had no characteristics and making sure that the instructor had not changed the script, they stepped forward. As for the sneezing field, it seemed to be related to the catfish itself. When the catfish moves, the field also moves. After confirming this, the plane will not leave. Just fixed this thing and hung it in the sky. And the fish meat, actually there is nothing to study. After the thing was separated from the catfish's body surface, it became an ordinary substance, did not move, and had no derived properties. In this case, it's easy to handle. Just cut the fish into 8 pieces and beat it into residue, maybe this characteristic will be eliminated naturally. Well, eliminating the characteristic is definitely not that simple, but it doesn't matter if you try. As Chris ordered to fire, Mo Kyung directly beat the fish into mincemeat. However, Mo Kyung clearly saw a round ball of wool coming out of the fish's belly, bouncing on the ground twice and falling off. Entering the lake. Mo Kyung frowned. Everything else was broken into pieces, but this thing was still intact and elastic. Is this thing the core? Mo Kyung thought about it, but still reported it to the captain without saying anything. Report, a hair ball fell out of the body and fell into the lake, something feels wrong. Hairball? Is it the internal organs of the woolly fish? Chris said. Mo Kyung frowned, thought for a while, and said, well, it may be the internal organs, but I suspect it is the core. Maybe it is the source of this contained object. The contained object should not be destroyed so easily. Mo Kyung said. However, before he could finish speaking, Alexander's excited voice came from the headset. It works. It really works. The effect of forced sneezing is gone. Mo Kyung was stunned. Looking down, I saw Alexander driving a sheep towards the lake. In front of the sheep's head, the sheep is fine, and so is Alexander. Even when we get to the lake, it's okay. What the hell, is it really gone? Mo Kyung stared in astonishment. Are you thinking too much? Taking stock of the top 10 golden fingers, the protagonist of Wanjie went crazy. Author, Chirp. Chapter 330. No way, this contained object was contained so easily. Obviously it's impossible. I suspect that the yarn ball is the source, the body of the contained object. I suspect so too, but what would happen if the field disappeared? I can't figure it out. Things like contained objects don't make sense and have no clue at all. Well, I guess, this yarn ball is the main body, and when the yarn ball parasitizes a certain creature, it will develop its characteristics and assimilate that creature into a yarn ball. If the parasitic creature is beaten into powder, then the domain will disappear, and the yarn ball body will find a new host, but during this period, the domain will disappear briefly. Then everything makes sense. Damn it, you genius, are you really a genius? Can this all make you figure it out? Is this okay? I feel it's quite reasonable. Good guy, you are the real shelter member, right? At this time, everyone was discussing and looking at everything in the picture. Obviously, they didn't believe that the containment object was simply broken. The yarn ball must be the key point. And at this time, in the picture, as Mo Kyung listened to the captain's words, He frowned for a moment. He found that the captain seemed to have been taken away from him, like a brainless retard. Is this still a member? This is simply the same as a member. The logic of the behavior is completely inconsistent. Captain, do you really believe that the characteristics of the contained object have been erased? Mo Kyung said in a deep voice. No. However, Chris smiled. Of course I don't believe it, but, Mo Kyung, although you have experienced containment breaches before, your thinking has not changed. At the same time, you have seen too few contained objects. Naturally, I don't believe that the effect has been erased, but it is very common to suppress the expansion of the effect of contained objects. Many contained objects have immortality effects, and some have annihilation and resurrection effects. However, the effect of breaking it into pieces and temporarily suppressing or weakening it also exists in the contained object. In this way, the contained object can be successfully suppressed. Come to think of it, you also know that there are too many contained objects that have been continuously suppressed and maintained to this day. I don't think the effect of sneezing has disappeared or been erased. Maybe the ball of yarn you mentioned is one of the sources. Maybe the ball of yarn will continue to reorganize and become that big fish. But no matter what, at least now, the area where the object was contained has been suppressed and disappeared, which means we have found a way to contain it. We only need to prevent its recovery, which can be regarded as suppression and containment in disguise. Following Chris's words, Mo Kyung suddenly understood. He thought Chris had been taken away from him. He was thinking too one-sidedly. He did think that the yarn ball was unusual, but he didn't think of the deeper meaning. At this moment, he once again understood the gap between himself and the old team members. This gap was not in technology or means, but in the way of thinking. He had just come out of the extreme island, and he was no different from the real members. Fabi, a quasi-member like Chris who became the captain and is about to become a member, is no match. However, although his thinking was different, Mo Kyung saw with his own eyes that the yarn ball was weird. The captain said this chase, just because he didn't see the weirdness of the yarn ball. So, he still had to speak and speak his mind. Captain, that's what I thought. Mo Kyung opened his mouth and immediately expressed his thoughts. He believed that the fish was not the containment object, but the ball of yarn. Perhaps the catfish was a serious catfish before, but it became what it became after swallowing the ball of yarn by mistake. Mo Kyung said it all. At this time, while instructing other team members to collect the fish carcass and meat pieces, Chris said, well, your idea is good, and your containment thinking is also good, but if you follow your idea, then this containment object it will be easier to contain. Look again, are there any living creatures in the lake? Well, Mo Kyung was stunned and opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but for a moment, he really couldn't say anything. Yes, so what if the yarn ball is the main body? Even if this thing can parasitize and transform, there are no living things around it. Where can it go to parasitize and transform? Only. Captain, no matter what, a containment object is a containment object and cannot be treated so carelessly, Mo Kyung said. I know. Chris nodded. So I sent 3 people. As a captain, if you can't think of this, then you don't deserve to be a captain. He is naturally cautious, so he only sent 3 people, 2 to collect the fragments, and Alexander went to the lake to check. There are no D-class personnel here. Any situation needs to be borne by the members, it is impossible not to collect those fragments, right? This is also a necessary process. If an accident occurs and a price is paid, it also means that there is new information, and other people can be used to correct it. Therefore, he only sent 3 people, just in case. However, at this moment, Captain, a team member's voice suddenly came from the headset, as if he was planning to report something. However, he sneezed suddenly. At this moment, Everyone looked shocked. Sneeze. Sneezing at this time? Come back quickly. Chris's pupils shrank and he shouted in a low voice. Yes, the three people responded quickly. However, one of the team members sneezed again. This time, everyone was no longer lucky. The field must have expanded. The three people ran back quickly. Two of them sneezed while running. It was Alexander. He hasn't been hit yet. It seems that the area is not expanding as fast as he can run. When Chris saw it, a golden light flashed in his eyes, and he suddenly shouted in a low voice, Alexander, go back now, go to the lake and find out the stuff. What? Listening to the words in the headset, Amokayan was stunned. Two team members have obviously been tricked. Why did Chris ask Alexander to go back? Is NT this asking Alexander to become a death squad? Even if he wants to be a death squad, he should let him. How about two players who have started sneezing? Why let Alexander go? Do you think Alexander can hold on longer? Those two players have already started to be infected and need to take a moment. For a moment, Amokayan's mind was in a mess. However, he saw that Alexander turned around and rushed towards the lake without saying a word. He believed in Chris as the captain. Sure enough, Chris swung the hook and hooked directly into Alexander. Alexander also quickly tied the rope around his body. This was to ask Alexander to fish out the thing, and then pull Alexander out. It was only then that Chris' words rang out in Amokayan's earphone. Amokayan, have you ever wondered why realms briefly disappeared before? Well, was it crushed? Amokayan asked hesitantly. Yes, it was crushed. Chris nodded and said the yarn ball is a containment object. In fact, it is not a parasitism that will cause the field effect of spreading sneezing. The catfish can be regarded as a secondary source of infection at most. And you crushed the catfish before, let the yarn ball leave the catfish, causing the field to disappear temporarily. Although I don't know why, this is a decision. The catfish is crushed, the field retracts, the distance position is refreshed, and everything starts from scratch. Amokayan paused and nodded slowly. If we follow this idea, we can design targeted containment measures. We only need to let the creature continuously swallow it, and then take out the wool ball and constantly reset its domain. Good. Chris nodded, still loosening the rope in his hand, and then he continued to ask, but it will reset the range when it leaves the host, but what if there is no host? How do we reset it? This. Amokayan paused. He didn't expect Chris to ask this question. For a moment, he frowned. He didn't know how to answer. This is indeed a problem. Maybe there are other ways, there should be other ways to contain this object. It's just that he doesn't know. His information was too little. But no matter what, it's not Alexander who goes there, it's me who should go, Amokayan suddenly said. Chris was stunned. Haven't you seen my information? As Amokayan said, he jumped from a height of 2,000 meters without saying a word. Before Amokayan could completely fall into the lake, there seemed to be an invisible soft wall in front of him, taking away his momentum, and then, the light end is loaded into the water. As soon as he entered the water, Amokayan sneezed unexpectedly. Fortunately, he had the deep diver effect and couldn't drown at all. Even if water entered his lungs, he couldn't drown. As for Alexbig, at this time, Alexander was in shock. When he got into the water and forced himself to sneeze for the first time, he choked on the water, then continued to sneeze, and then went into shock. Half asleep and half awake, I was still sneezing. There is no doubt that only Amokayan can accomplish this task, Alexander cannot do it at all. To be honest, if he hadn't been here, if today hadn't been an internship, if today had been a real fight with a contained object, and with Chris's arrangement, Alexander would have definitely died here. Without saying a word, Amokayan threw Alexander up, and then began to look for the fur ball under the water. He was coughing crazily and choking on water, while enduring the severe pain and searching. Finally, he saw the fur ball, picked it up without saying a word, and then, enduring the pain, floated to the surface of the lake. At this time, he was still twitching, and waves of pain hit him, making him unable to move. At this time, Yi Bo's calm voice sounded in the headset. Alexander was killed in battle. Mo Kyan was killed in battle. Yi Bo's throat seemed to have been injured and was a little dry and hoarse. You are so big, please help me, the corner of Mo Kyan's mouth twitched. At this time, countless liquefied natural gas was spraying out from his mouth, and white smoke was emitting. He couldn't stand it anymore, so he simply got into the water again. In the water, he didn't need to breathing, he couldn't drown. When he got to the shore, he needed to breathe, which was even more painful. But when he sneezed in the water, he couldn't drown, but it was still painful. Mo Kyan was in a daze, and when he heard Yi Bo say that someone had gone to save him, indicating that he could loosen the fur ball on his hand. However, Mo Kyan refused to let go and expressed his meaning: eat, bang, eat. What does he want to say? I know, I will judge, just let go, Yi Bo's hoarse voice sounded. After hearing this, Mo Kyan put the hairball in his hand on the shore. To be honest, he understood what Chris was thinking. Let Alexander go to the water, find the hairball, and then eat the hairball to refresh. But Alexander almost choked to death as soon as he entered the water, so how could he find the hairball? So, Mo Kyan had to come. What he wanted to express was that he found the hairball and ate it, refreshing the scope of this containment. Yi Bo also understood, that's why he said he could judge. In a daze, Mo Kyan didn't know how much time had passed, when he felt someone pulling him. When he opened his eyes again, it was already a medical team took over. Apparently, he was rescued and out of the sneezing range. He is much better now. And the medical team is also treating the object quickly. Because they know the characteristics of this containment object, they all use specialized information to sneeze. The injury was excessive. Alexander was also lying on the hospital bed next to him, obviously much more serious than him. Mo Kyan was given another injection and fell asleep. When he woke up again, it was night. The injury is completely healed. Well, Mo Kyan was stunned. Is the medical condition so good? Will it be cured so quickly? Drink this, you don't need a blood transfusion, but you still need a replacement. A doctor handed Mo Kyan a cup of black goo. Mo Kyan knew that this stuff replenishes blood, so he didn't bother to ask more questions and drank it directly. Until then, he looked at the male doctor and asked, how is it? Is containment over? No, the doctor shook his head. Isn't it over yet? Mo Kyan frowned. Logically speaking, his last operation should be to make the thing refresh its range. He thought about it and went out directly. Instead of seeing Chris and the others, he saw Alexander, Uxin, and the other two team members. We were sitting and chatting. When I saw him coming, I smiled and greeted him. Mo Kyan, you finally woke up. Thanks to you for finding the fur ball this time, otherwise our sacrifices would have been in vain, Alexander laughed. Well, after all, I watched it fall into the water and knew the unknown. Mo Kyan smiled and said casually, then changed the subject and asked, I heard it's not over yet, what's going on? Alexander thought for a while and said, you ate the hairball. After that, it and your body were left on the shore. Uxin stepped forward, smashed your body into pieces, took out the ball, and reset the range again. Uxin smiled and said, then I took advantage of the narrowing of the range and stuffed the wool ball into the sheep's mouth. As long as animals keep coming and the range is refreshed, it can basically be controlled. Oh. Mo Kyan thought for a while and then asked, you are here, so you should be considered a sacrifice. By the way, how did you die? Alexander curled his lips and said, this guy is here to save your infection. 4 minutes later, the instructor determined that he was dead. If it weren't for the drill, it would really be a wasted death. If it wasn't a drill and Amokayan was already dead, I wouldn't have gone back to save him. It was just because it was a drill that I went to save him. What if he really died? Uxian curled his lips. Amokayan looked at Uxian and smiled slightly. He also knew that Uxian was caring about him. After all, the two had been partners for a year the following year, and they still had a certain bond. However, in fact, when I heard the instructor swear that I was killed in action, I knew that he was absolutely sure that he would not let me die, Amokayan said with a smile. Anyway, the spirit is worthy of praise, but it is not encouraged to do it. I was like this at the beginning, but I got scolded by the captain. Alexander laughed. Is that so? But this time, Amokayan frowned and stopped talking. I know what you want to say. Alex smiled and said, actually, the captain has read your information and knows that you have the deep diver effect. But the reality is that just because you can't drown, you must be more suitable than me, because I am closer. But you went into shock when you entered the water, Amokayan said quietly. I've actually been looking for it for a while, but I just couldn't find it, Alexander argued, squeezing his neck. All right, Amokayan shrugged. Seriously, I didn't expect I couldn't find it. Alexander sighed. I originally thought of coming by the water. Who knew it would be so hard to find, but thanks to you, I found it as soon as I got into the water. This completed the key part of the mission.